Good morning, everyone, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this, our second annual event, sharing the learning from the groundbreaking work that's going on across the 5 A Better Start partnerships to improve outcomes in early childhood. I'm Frances Lyons, and I'm Head of Research and Evidence at National Children's Bureau, and I have the pleasure and the privilege of leading the team at NCB that delivers a range of learning and dissemination activities for a better start on behalf of the National Lottery Community Fund. We're delighted today to have more than 700 people registered for this event from across central and local government, the voluntary and community sector, as well as representatives from across the A Better Start teams and their partners. Today is all about raising awareness and improving knowledge of the work going on across A Better Start. And this morning, we're going to hear from the Minister for Children and Families, Will Quince, who will be telling us about the government's plans for prioritising early years. We'll also hear from Matthew Dodd, Head of Policy at the National Children's Bureau, who will give us some insights on the direction of travel of some of the key government policies in the area of early childhood. The rest of the day, and indeed the bulk of the agenda, will be about the work of A Better Start, where we'll hear from a range of representatives from across the 5 partnerships about the innovative work they're doing and the difference that this is making to the lives of babies, young children and their families, as well as those who work with them. For any social media users in attendance, please do tweet about today's event using the hashtag ABS Reducing Inequalities. You'll see it behind my head here. And we will be tweeting throughout the day, so if you please follow our thread at NCB Tweets. But before we hear from the Minister, I'm pleased and delighted to introduce David Knott, Chief Executive of the National Lottery Community Fund, who's going to provide an overview of A Better Start and set this day in context for us. David, over to you.
Morning, everyone, and thank you, Frances, for that introduction. And what a lovely video there. I think it's a great and inspiring start to the morning. I think I'll have that jingle in my head for the rest of the week too. Look, I'm really delighted to be here with you today. It's great to see so many people signing up and an opportunity to hear more about the work of A Better Start. It's also really important we're using opportunities like this to bring together a wide, diverse range of stakeholders. Dare I say it, perhaps one of the last times that we'll be doing this fully virtually, but please do use that opportunity, the connections that you make today, and develop them going forward. So I'm a relatively new chief executive here at the National Lottery Community Fund, and only fairly recently have been allowed to get out and about and see some of our projects. So it was a real delight when I got to recently visit A Better Start in Lambeth. It's a programme delivered through the Lambeth Early Action Partnership, literally by name and action, helping children and families leap forward in Lambeth. I also felt a bit like a secret shopper there. It's my local area. And the facilities I visited there were also ones that I got to use when my children were a little bit younger. So I got to talk with, hear from the families, the staff, have a little play, root around the logs, the undergrowth, finding beetles, hear about the real difference the programmes are making in this area of London. So the theme for today's conference is reducing inequalities in early childhood, learning from A Better Start. And that's really the heart of the programme, the aim being to improve outcomes for babies and young children, reduce inequalities in early childhood. And part of the impetus for this, and our focus on addressing inequality, was first highlighted by the World Health Organization's Closing the Gap in a Generation report, published in 2008. Many of you will know, subsequently, there was a review by Professor Sir Michael Marmot into health inequalities in England, and that was published in 2010. That identified 6 policy objectives, and the very first one of those was the basic premise of A Better Start, to give every child the best start in life. And of course, we all know that that's such an important issue at this moment as we emerge from the COVID pandemic, and we know how the COVID pandemic has also further exacerbated some inequalities. During the first phase of the pandemic, we all saw how the A Better Start partnerships adapted and evolved their programs to meet the challenge and the innovative and rapid ways in which services adapted. They were supported by us at the Community Fund. We took a flexible approach in the grant management, helping enable some of those sites to respond to the emerging situation and work as effectively as possible with other agencies in their area. So we feel there's a really great synergy between A Better Start and the UK government policy agenda for children, including the implementation of the Best Start in Life vision, which A Better Start contributed the evidence to, and the expansion of family hubs, and the plans to level up the disadvantaged parts of the country. I think we're going to be hearing a bit more about that in the Minister's remarks shortly. It's also today part of our mission here at the Community Fund to ensure that the evidence, the experience from Better Start is shared and used to its absolute fullest. So to give just a little bit more of an overview there, A Better Start's a 10-year programme from the National Lottery Community Fund, £215 million invested. The focus has been on promoting good early childhood development, improving the life chances of babies and the very young children, supporting families to give children the best start in life. The longer term nature of this funding has enabled partnerships to develop the relationships, the trust, the learning needed to influence local systems, and the time and the space to take risk and innovate. There are 5 A Better Start partnerships, all represented today in Blackpool, Bradford, Nottingham, Southend and Lambeth. Each of those 5 areas have shown they've got a strong shared local vision. They're using existing resources to contribute and bring innovative, forward-thinking approaches to improving outcomes for children. It's been particularly implemented where there's been a combination of deprivation and high levels of need, and also real local strengths and the commitment to the change. The involvement of parents and community volunteers has also been very at the heart of helping shape the local priorities and decisions, leading, I think, to much greater insight into what works and what doesn't. Certainly from what I saw when I went to see the programme here in Lambeth, that parental community involvement has been really crucial to extending the reach and bringing the programmes to the benefit of others who might not always benefit, and to the long-term sustainability of the programme. The A Better Start partnerships are developing, testing new ways to improve children's diet and nutrition, social, emotional development, speech, language and communication. They're developing approaches on both levelling up preschool children's experiences and outcomes, and using learning to help drive early year system improvements across the areas. Delighted to say in its first 1001 Days Life report, the House of Commons Health and Social Care Committee shared our view that A Better Start delivers a truly place-based approach, and that involving families in the wider community in the service design has seen significant improvement in services. I think that's a great testament to the programme. Overall, the 5 A Better Start partnerships cover 24 wards. Over 220 partnership organisations have been involved, and that's really testimony to the importance of collaboration and partnership working together to reduce inequalities. Looking at some of the numbers, we now know that over 54,000 primary beneficiaries have been part of the Better Start service. The number of practitioners trained using funding from A Better Start is over 6,500, and the number of volunteers engaged 870. So some great numbers there. So we're now past the midpoint and coming to the end of year 7 of delivery. So it's really at a key moment where the test and learn approach to the programme means that we're starting to see what works best. And it's a really opportune moment to reflect on what we've learned and the impact and therefore what's next. So at the fund here, we're really supporting partnerships to focus on those elements of the programme that are demonstrating success, improving the wider systems in which they work. We'll be sharing the learning throughout, and this conference is just a key part of that. There'll be a comprehensive programme of learning available through our evidence library on our website, giving first-hand insight into the early years services challenges and best practice. We'll also be informing and shaping local and national policy, disseminating this learning widely, ensuring that others working in early childhood development and place-based systems change can benefit. Through the work with NCB, we published a number of insight reports. They share the learning in relation to system change, to COVID, and to the practice. It's really clear that this data-informed decision-making is really high on the policy and practice agenda, particularly those working with children and family, and really rightly so. So the national evaluation will also be exploring some of the experiences of families and parents from diverse backgrounds who participated in the Better Start programme. That's part of an ongoing programme evaluation, and I think we'll be hearing a little bit more about that later. Finally, just to say, last October, we in the fund published our commitment to communities. We've said that using data and evidence is really at the heart of our own strategy. And we want to really redouble our efforts to measure, understand what works, see where the opportunities lie. So this is a really important part of that conversation. Here at the Community Fund, we're also shortly going to be launching a conversation about where we should focus our resources in the years ahead, the start of a wider strategy renewal. And there are some really important lessons, I think, from this programme as we look ahead at the hopes and aspirations of communities. So we're really confident that Better Start will provide that rich experience, that rich evidence, to inform how funding is invested in communities, and in this particular case, to support children to prosper and thrive. So that's all from me as an introduction, and we're really pleased now to hear from Will Quince, the Minister for Children and Families, who's going to say a little bit more about the government's programme of work to support children and families in the early years. Thank you, and enjoy today's conference.
A better start is one of the most important things we can strive towards. The data shows clearly what we all know from our personal experience. Children's early development has a lifelong lasting impact. It affects their social and mental well-being for years to come. It has a direct impact on how they do academically when they're teenagers, and it plays an important role in where they end up later in life. So we owe it to children to get the early years right, and I know that everyone listening will agree. The statistics are clear. 40% of the overall gap between disadvantaged 16-year-olds and their peers has already emerged by the age of 5. While this gap has been closing over the last 12 years, I know there is more that we need to do. One of the most important ways we support young children's development is by continuing to fund 15 hours of free childcare a week for disadvantaged 2-year-olds and 30 hours of free childcare for 3 and 4-year-olds. But I'm committed to doing more. As Children and Families Minister, I strongly believe that the best way of making sure all children get the best start is to strengthen families. And I know that if we intervene early, we're going to have more of an impact. That's why, building on the Ledson review to reduce inequalities and outcomes for young children, at the spending review, the Chancellor announced £500 million to transform Start for Life and Family Hub services. This will fund a network of family hubs and specific support to join up locally and improve access to services. The model prioritises connections between families, professionals, services and providers, and puts relationships at the heart of family help. This record investment will transform services in 75 local authorities over the next 3 years and builds on the existing £39.5 million investment to champion family hubs. It will also expand our Supporting Families programme, helping 300,000 vulnerable families with integrated support to improve their lives. That's 300,000 families given a helping hand to make a change, keep their family together, make it stronger, and provide the best chance for children. Of course, none of this would be possible at all without the unsung heroes who work in early education and childcare. Since becoming Children's Minister, I've met those working with children and families across the country, and they're some of the most inspiring, dedicated people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And I want to give them the tools they need to do the best job possible, which is why we're investing £20 million to train professionals in disadvantaged areas, alongside £153 million to train early years staff to support the learning and development of the very youngest children. And given how critical their job is, the government has provided additional funding for early years entitlements so that councils can increase the hourly rates they give to childcare providers. These are important steps we're taking to support families, the bedrock of a strong society. and it would not be possible without your continued engagement and hard work. My door remains open to you, so thank you for listening and for all that you do.
Hi everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the Minister for that video. Minister for Children and Families is clearly confident in what the government is doing in this space, and I guess it's my job now to sort of unpick a bit of what the Minister talked about and see how it stacks up. So my name is Matthew Dodd. I'm Head of Policy and Public Affairs at the National Children's Bureau, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the current landscape in England at the national policy level and how it relates to the work that's been going on at A Better Start. So there's the influence the A Better Start programme has already had on policy development, which, as David said, is extensive, and then the opportunities that are still available to influence. So for a government that didn't say that much about children in their 2019 manifesto for the general election, the government has actually now got a really huge policy agenda for children, huge relevance to young families and to our youngest children. So the next 2 years, I think, are going to be absolutely crucial in terms of providing the framework in which, you know, generations of children are going to grow up. So let's start with the detail. So I want to start by saying that there is much we can welcome in recent government policy. And when I say we, I feel I can say that on behalf of the National Children's Bureau, but also those involved with the ABS programme as well. And also, I'm sure many of you on this call. So starting off with the recognition of the first 1,000 days of life, the Andrea Ledson review into early healthy development is the sort of centerpiece of that, focusing as it did on the first 1,000 days of life. But we shouldn't forget there's also been a number of other initiatives. The Maternity Transformation Programme, for example, run out of NHS England, focused on improving local maternity systems. Family hubs and a whole range of other policy areas as well. But I think absolutely a recognition that the first 1,000 days of life are crucial. The next thing I think is important to recognise is the increased focus on integration as an approach to meeting the needs of children and families. So we all know that the lives of children don't fit neatly into boxes called education, health, and social care. You know, children exist in an ecosystem with multiple factors affecting their development. But where you see government policy at the moment, it's rare to see it without a focus on integration, integrated approaches to service delivery and meeting needs. The third area, and obviously we're going to be hearing more about this from A Better Start colleagues after me, but co-production with families and communities. So understanding that service development, commissioning, service delivery will all be achieved better and more in a more responsive way if it is built with the communities and the families it is meant to serve. So again, there is a strong focus in a number of areas of policy on this. The focus on health inequalities, obviously, as David said, that was built into A Better Start from the start. And now we're seeing that as an absolutely central focus of the Department for Health and Social Care, integrated care systems, which I'll come on to in a minute. But health inequalities and a recognition that those health inequalities across the life course have their origin in childhood and early childhood. You know, that really is built into the a number of different initiatives. And a focus on vulnerable children is also evident. We've got the independent review of children's social care, the review into special educational needs and disabilities and other areas as well. So there is a focus on vulnerable children. And then the focus on family support and the parent-child relationship. I think the Minister in his remarks, made it clear that the family is a crucial concept for them, and strengthening the family and providing additional support is a priority. So I think that's my summary of where I think there are things we can welcome. But I'm going to go into a bit of the detail now. So I'm going to start with I'm going to start in 2021 with the 3-year spending review. So as we all know, after the financial crash of 2008 and then the coalition government's decision to significantly reduce public spending, we faced, I guess, around a decade of austerity with significant cuts in a number of different areas of public policy. And I think with local authorities probably the hardest hit. That trend had sort of started to change with the Theresa May government, who invested 10 billion in the NHS, which formed part of, turned into the NHS long-term plan. And then this government in 2019 was elected with a commitment to end austerity. So that was this government's plan. Then the pandemic happened, and the economy stopped working for a whole year. So tax revenues massively decreased, and public spending massively increased with the furlough scheme and other COVID-related expenditure. So this was a strange context in which to have a 3-year spending review, which happened last autumn. And I think, however, as the Minister has pointed out, what we did have at that spending review was investment in some of the areas we would hope to have seen investment. That doesn't mean investment was given everywhere where we think it was needed, but at least some of the areas where we felt investment was needed, that was picked up, and I'll talk about that in a second. In terms of government priorities, there was a section in the Chancellor's speech dedicated to children, and as part of that, a really clear emphasis on the youngest children. And for those of us who follow these big fiscal events and we watch them to see where children sort of, how well they're featured, that is a very unusual occurrence. And it is very rare for children to get much of a look in. So to see a really central part of the Chancellor's speech given over to children and very young children is definitely progress. So the investment that's been mentioned already, so 300 million to deliver the Best Start in Life vision, 82 million to develop the network of family hubs across the country, 40% increase in the Supporting Families programme, so that's a further £200 million, which provides intensive support to families who face multiple disadvantage. And then a small uplift in the hourly rate paid to early years providers. So those are just the ones I've identified that relate specifically to the areas that we'll be talking about today. Obviously, that's welcome investment, but I don't think we can pretend that that is sufficient to fund services in the long term. This is really transformation funding in many ways, which will allow us to move towards a new model of service delivery rather than a long-term fix to the funding situation. And then the other thing that we can't pretend is that it covered all of the areas that were in dire need of investment. Health visiting is particular, something that springs to mind that didn't get any additional funding despite the really difficult the challenges that local authorities are facing in terms of delivering the 5 visits and everything like that. So while the investment was welcome, we can't pretend it's solved all the challenges in the system. So that's the context. This additional investment is a sort of crucial context in terms of what's going to be going on in policy terms over the next few years. I'd also say that this was a 3-year spending review, so we've now got 3 years in which this money will flow into the system, and we need to make the case for further investment at the next spending review. So there'll be a really important process of measuring impact and making sure that we've got all the data we need to make the case so that the next time the Treasury asks for the evidence base behind these interventions, that we've got a really strong case. And obviously ABS is going to play a crucial part as well as one of the sort of key sources of evidence and data. So the second sort of big picture thing I just want to touch on is the proposals to reform the way the NHS is structured. So we've got a picture here on the right of the white paper, which set out the direction of travel, called Integration and Innovation, which basically set out the government's plans to create integrated care systems, which will be the new sort of model for NHS delivery. Parliament's on the left because a bill was introduced to Parliament in last year, 2021, called the Health and Care Bill. And the Health and Care Bill provides the statutory framework through which these new NHS structures will operate. So these new structures are going to be absolutely crucial in terms of commissioning decisions, in terms of priority of young children within local systems. So I think just want to reflect on these for a little. So at the heart of the white paper and the Health and Care Bill is our integrated care systems. So I think what we name things is important, and when we name things, we sort of tell that thing how we want them to behave. And so the title of integrated care systems is quite positive, I would say. So these are systems that care for people in an integrated way. And I think that's something that we would definitely want to support. So ICSs are fundamentally partnerships between the NHS and local government, with a number of other partners as well, but that's the sort of key partnership that forms the basis of them. Their role is to plan and commission services across an area, and they explicitly have an all-age focus. So, absolutely, maternity services, early years services, first 1,000 days, all sits within that. And they have an express duty to reduce health inequalities as part of that. They're also expected to work closely with the communities they serve, and prevention is a sort of key principle that they're supposed to operate under. So you can see that a lot of these things are things that very much resonate with the ABS approach. And then crucially, integrated care boards, and it's a bit confusing, but integrated care boards sit within integrated care systems. Integrated care boards will replace CCGs, and that's absolutely crucial. So from the 1st of July, that's the current deadline, CCGs will cease to exist, and ICSs, or ICBs rather, will take on all of their sort of legal duties and direct commissioning duties. So a really big change there. And I think all of this has been driven by a recognition that the Lansley reforms, as they're sometimes known, or the Health and Social Care Act 2012 reforms, just haven't delivered the integrated cooperative system that's needed. And this is an attempt to sort of change that. Crucially, there's 42 integrated care boards compared to, a while ago, there were 200 plus clinical commissioning groups. So ICBs are much bigger than the previous CCGs. So I just illustrate that with a picture. So these are the CCGs previously serving parts of Surrey, and this is what it looks like now. Surrey Heartlands is the ICS and the ICB, and those CCGs will now, form part of that ICS instead. So that's happening all over the country, and that is the process we're in the middle of. Some ICSs are much more advanced than others. Surrey Heartlands is one of them. Surrey Heartlands is also one that has, in fact, prioritised the first 1,000 days of life as a sort of priority within their ICS. So some ICSs are quite far advanced, others are quite quite new, but the crucial thing, as well as their different focus, they're much bigger. So Surrey Heartlands has four CCGs within its footprint, but the biggest ICSs might have 10 or 12 local authorities within their footprint. So we're going to have to get used to these much bigger structures in the NHS in particular. So children must be a priority within ICSs. This isn't me saying I hope they will be a priority within ICSs. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this session, is that a commitment has been made, a recognition has been made within government and by Parliament that children and young people, babies, children and young people, must be a priority within ICSs, and that babies, children and young people are a special case and must receive special additional consideration. And that's the process that a number of us, probably many of you who are at this on this conference, have been a part on. So we've been working, the National Children's Bureau hosts the Health Policy Influencing Group, and we've been working with the House of Lords to make sure that children really are prioritised. And I'm pleased to say that the primary legislation will set this out. An amendment's been made, so the primary legislation will set it out. There will be an executive children's lead on every board, and there'll be bespoke guidance on meeting the needs of babies, children and young people. So really important that local systems know this. We're still working through the process. The bill hasn't received royal assent, but really do take this message back to your local areas that children must be a priority in these new systems, and there must be a focus, and that further guidance will be on its way soon. So I want to talk about those big structural changes, because they're the context in which these other things happen. So, Start for Life. It's absolutely right that Andrea Leadsom is on this photo because she has been personally responsible for driving this agenda within government, you know, behind closed doors with the Prime Minister and all of that. So it's absolutely right that we've got a photo of her here holding up that report. It was published last year, and we're still in the implementation phase. So what do we know about where we are? It is clearly tied to the money. So without additional funding, it's very hard to deliver a program of improvement. But we do know there's going to be investment and service development in 75 areas. So it's going to half of local authorities, the funding. And the funding is 300 million in total. And it's covering these areas. So parent carer panels, so that's the co-production element, parent carer panels, co-producing that local offer, that local Start for Life offer with local areas, additional funding for breastfeeding, infant parent mental health services, parenting programs, and a small amount for workforce pilots. Now, the timing of this conference unfortunately means we haven't yet got the sort of final details, and a lot of really interesting thinking is going on within government, working, with stakeholders on, what this model should look like, what should be the expectations on this funding, what the expectations on local areas should be once they get this funding. So I just saw a question pop up about the other 75 areas. That's what they provided funding for, and that's what we're going to have to work with, I think. I guess it's down to all of us plus government to show that this makes a difference. And then when it comes to another spending round, arguing that the investment is extended to the others. I thought I had ages for this presentation, and I'm running over now, so I'll have to speed up slightly. The 75 local areas don't yet know who they are, and we are waiting for an announcement which will set out how the money is going to be distributed and what the expectations are. However, the timing of this conference means we didn't quite get there, and we'll be expecting that in the next few months. The other key element of policy here is the family hubs policy. So again, that's already been mentioned, and there's a lot of synergy here with the Start for Life, Best Start for Life and a Better Start agenda. So here you can see, this is from the DFE's Family Hub Model Framework. And if you want to know what a Family Hub should do, DFE have set it out really clearly in that Family Hub Model Framework. It has an effective multi-agency board, families and young people co-design services and programs within it. It has pool budgets across a range of funding sources, and Start for Life is a core element of that delivery. Although a Family Hub does cover a wider age range, it does go up to 18 or 25 if you have special educational needs and disability. It is still being thought about as, a key part of the early years offer. It's not just an early years offer, but a key part of it is the early years offer. So as you can see, a lot of sort of positives within the Family Hub model as set out by government. And again, the 82 million that has been earmarked for family hubs, we're waiting for an announcement about how that's going to be distributed, and who to, and what the requirements are going to be. So family hubs are going to be a really important part of service delivery in the future, and it's absolutely important that we get in there and make sure that the earliest years are fully in there. I just want to mention one other big area of policy. The independent review of children's social care is quite a bold and big review. It's looking at the whole system of children's social care, from early help through to Section 17, child protection, looked after children, to care leavers. So it's the whole system. But what we do know is that family help is going to be an absolutely crucial element of the recommendations, and we know that because the review has already put out some blogs where it's made that really, really clear in a case for change. So we're hoping to see some really strong recommendations there on improving family help. And again, the review has been clear that there's no situation in which more money will not be needed. And as we know, we've seen a huge shift in in expenditure from early help to much later intervention in the children's social care system. So the review has recognised that, and we need to redress that balance. So really important. That's going to be published in summer, and that's another chance to make the case for the earliest years, to say getting it right, identifying families who might need support. We need a really good early years offer right from conception through to 5. Frances is allowing me one more minute, I can see, because she hasn't jumped on, so I'll just do my last slide here. And this is the seriousness of the situation. This slide doesn't necessarily reflect it, but I want to bring us full circle back to the spring statement, which is happening tomorrow. So as we know, the cost of living, inflation is having a hugely detrimental impact on family finances, particularly those on a low income. And all of our evidence shows, you can have the best policy in the world, but if you've got rising deprivation and poverty, children's outcomes are not going to improve. So without getting into the politics, we very much hope the Chancellor is going to do something to alleviate the impact of inflation on family finances tomorrow. Because we won't improve children's outcomes if that's getting worse. So thank you very much. Thanks for allowing me an extra couple of minutes, Frances. Hope that was helpful. Hope I gave a good enough overview, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That was a really helpful and insightful overview of what's going on at government in terms of early childhood and children and families. And it was incredibly encouraging to see so much of the work that has been happening across the Better Start for the last number of years really reflected in the direction of travel there. We're now going to move on to the main part of our agenda today, folks, which is a series of presentations from across the Better Start teams, focusing on how they are empowering communities through their strong work in co-production, how they are changing local systems through their strong focus on evidence, data and outcomes, And thirdly, the work that they're doing to mobilise local workforce and communities. After each presentation, there will be an opportunity for delegates to put some questions to a Better Start panellists. So please, throughout this session, if you look across the bottom of your screen and you click on the Q&A function, if you have it open, you can type your own questions into it. You'll also see an option to like questions. If you see a question that you particularly want answered, if you just click like, it will raise up to the top of the box and it will be covered by our panellists afterwards. I hope you enjoy the next few sessions and learn a lot from across the Better Start teams. Over to Laura from Lambeth to kick the sessions off. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Laura McFarlane and I'm the Director of Better Start in Lambeth. I'm joined in this session by Tara Poor from Southend, Tanya Spence from Lambeth and Victoria Walker from Blackpool. I'm very pleased to introduce this first session, Empowering Communities Through Co-Production. Central to the aims of a Better Start is our approach to working with and empowering parents across all areas of our programmes. Our parents are experts through their lived experience, and we are privileged to have them working alongside us. Building community capacity and supporting the development of parental skills can improve services, shape our local places, and ultimately contribute to better outcomes for babies and children. In this session, you will hear about how each of our 5 A Better Start sites are working alongside parents and communities to harness and embrace their energy and passion to make a lasting difference for families. This session will first explore the theory of co-production, then show some examples of how we're doing it in practice, and finally reflect on the implications for policy and practice. I'm delighted now to hand over to Tara from Southend.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to talk about the theory of co-production. There isn't one single agreed definition for co-production. Essentially, it's a process in which experts by lived experience, with experts by profession and other relevant community stakeholders in equal partnerships to deliver outcomes that are meaningful for citizens and can include education, health and care planning, service design, strategy development and governance. Integral to co-production is the principle of reciprocity or mutual benefit. Another feature of co-productive work is that power is shared. Since power is invisible, attention must be given to this in the co-production process itself. Experience facilitation can help to safely surface power embedded in decision-making. Maintaining reciprocity, genuine power sharing, and ensuring diversity of lived experience in the participants is integral to a robust process. When you're thinking about the stages of co-production a project might involve, it can be helpful to think of the 4 C's or the 4 Co's. Whilst not every one of the 4 stages always features in every project, it's good to scoop out what might not be feasible and be able to understand this with everyone involved as early in the process as possible. At every stage, the group should include experts by lived experience and experts by profession. And depending on the length of the project, it may involve different people over time, and that's okay. It's helpful to the process to be able to capture and share the journey and learning to that point to orientate new participants and create a wider sense of belonging and ownership. Next slide, please. The first C for co-planning. Some models, like the co-production STAR, which was developed for the Scottish Government to help commission services, call this the commissioning stage. Instead, and is key to how the ABSS programme commissions projects and services. Co-planning captures the idea of getting stakeholders together around the project as soon as possible. Planning together helps to develop the project's aims and gives everyone ownership over co-creating a shared understanding. As part of planning, the group might talk about resources needed and whose voices are missing from around the table. They will also look at data, do some discovery work, some problem definition, and decide what needs to happen next. Next slide, please. Co-design comes next. Co-design comes next, and in this stage, the group, perhaps drawn from the planning group or involving new participants or a bit of both, work together to decide the what, where and when of the project. Working together as co-designers allows the group to co-create innovative and inclusive solutions that are recognisable to all stakeholders involved. Groups might want to consider drawing on the skills of service design experts to support this stage as well. Next slide, please. So the third stage is co-delivery. Co-delivery is when the project can only operate by actively involving the community, either as staff or volunteers. This is one of the stages that often takes time to establish, and some projects aren't designed to include co-delivery, and that's fine. And challenges to embedding co-delivery successfully can be expectations about particular qualifications and training needed to deliver certain public services. A positive current example addressing this challenge is the mental health sector, which has begun to embed peer support worker career pathways and created a peer support qualification framework. So whilst not every service will be co-delivered from the beginning, it is important to be clear about whether there are developmental pathways as part of the co-design process. For example, the ABS Parent Champion model. Next slide, please. Co-evaluation reflects on the project's impact. It measures whether the project has met its aims, what has been learned, and the impact on people's lives. The longevity of the ABS programme also means we should facilitate regular co-evaluation to measure, assess and review what we are doing and whether true co-production has taken place. We will hear more about co-production in relation to changing systems with a focus on evidence, data and child outcomes in session 2. The co-evaluation phase is also an opportunity to reflect on the co-production process itself and the learning taken from it. We are currently doing this work in Southend through reviewing how parents can be best empowered to plan for and continue their community and personal journey once their youngest child turns 4. Co-evaluation has enabled rich discussion and deep reflection to identify gaps in the current Parent Champion model in respects of legacy and closure for parents at the end of their traditional ABS journey. Co-evaluation has also highlighted the positive impacts such a strong community role has had on parents, and this has led to a holistic review on how impacts should be measured. Co-evaluation is critical to future service development and improvement, and it also helps to maintain and strengthen a co-productive relationship between ABS staff, organisations delivering services and parents. Co-evaluation will also help us to understand whether co-produced work is recognisable by participants and those that will use the service. Next slide, please. It is often difficult to numerically measure the impact of co-production, but stories of positive outcomes are seen through the ABS programme, and you will hear more about these today. The ABS programme in Southend is looked at the local system as a mature model of co-production, and there is a lot of demand for the skills, expertise and community reach of parent champions who are a huge asset for the community and to the community. The Southend Parent Champion model means parents are involved in end-to-end co-production, including parent-led engagement fund ideas, strategy and governance development, funding application assessments and marketing and communication development, to name but a few. Therefore, co-production runs both vertically through the ABS site, from the point of parent engagement to the partnership board, and horizontally across the programme in service delivery and design. It's the breadth and depth of co-productive activity that helps to make the case for this approach. The Southend experience is demonstrating that co-production approaches build community capacity and resilience, as well as supporting the delivery of programme objectives. Since you can't strip out co-production where it has already happened, it's hard to accurately measure the impact of co-production on outcomes of the ABS programme and at programme level. However, there are several impacts attributable to co-production. Involvement in the co-production process develops knowledge and skill sets for all participants, both the experts by experience and professions alike. It develops and builds relationships for future collaboration, and it generates system learning and intelligence that can be used in the wider system. In Southend, we see parent champions also progress on to further and higher education. Whether this is attributable to co-production can't be confirmed, but parent testimony suggests the process of working co-productively within their community builds confidence, social capital, and gives them a new perspective on the skills and talents. And I'm now going to hand over to Tanya from Lambeth.
Thank you, Tara.
Whilst the general principle of co-productive working involves equal inclusion and steer by end beneficiaries as part of work delivered or developed, this can ultimately look different from one piece of work to the next. However, all the ABS sites, there is a shared agreement of those factors ingrained as part of empowering communities through co-productive working. Certain factors need to be considered or adhered. These include thinking about the processes and approaches that contribute to effective co-productive working, understanding the need for and importance of power distribution, being open to learning and trying new things, recognising opportunities for bringing about effective change and lasting impact. Next slide, please. It's easy to get everybody into a space and start thrashing ideas about how to get to a collective solution, right? Well, cast your mind back to past job or earlier time in your current role. You'll probably agree that your confidence to challenge and question, as well as your levels of knowledge and understanding of the organisational structures and processes, has vastly grown since then. It's not that different to the level of thought required when inviting communities into a co-productive space. We are all growing and learning about what works in this space. Capacity building or capacity development, often achieved through methods including training, consultation, knowledge sharing and preparatory work, is often an important first step in ensuring those who are in a co-productive space are included, prepared, equally in the know and feeling confident to contribute. Of course, when we talk about building and ensuring capacity as an element of co-productive working, this is not necessarily a cheap or quick fix. Nottingham recognises that co-production is not cheap or easy, and to ensure we embed it in the programme and system, commissioned a provider to deliver broad offer support which has enabled the role of parent champions and ambassadors to grow. We will now hear from them.
Hi, my name is Katie and I'm the volunteer manager for Quorum Family and Childcare. Quorum Family and Childcare have been commissioned by Small Steps Big Changes to run their parent volunteer programme through the Community Voice Community Connections contract. Over the last 3 years, we have developed a robust recruitment process to ensure we build strong, lasting relationships with our volunteers. We provide all volunteers with the initial induction training to ensure they have the skills and knowledge they need to complete their role effectively. We then work together to develop development plans to ensure they're getting the right support and training they need to succeed in their volunteering role. Along with my colleague Steph, we spend a lot of time out and about in the local areas, talking to parents, being consistent, being visible, being present to ensure that we can build long-lasting relationships with parents to enable them to want to join the team of volunteers. So we work with workforce and services at different levels across Nottingham City to ensure that they're ready and supported to co-produce services with parent volunteers.
My name is Mamouna Aslam. I'm a parent champion for Small Steps Big Changes. The reason why I chose to be in this role is because I wanted to make a difference in young families and little children's lives. Small Step Big Changes groups are co-produced by parents, and it is really valuable that the parents' views are heard, and the fact that our views are taken on board is very rewarding. I am out in the community spreading the word about what SSBC do and all the amazing activities that are available for families. A lot of the times, personally, I do have experience of the groups, and that way I'm able to promote them even more, and also being involved in what all the partners have to say really helps us to spread the word about not just about SSBC, also what else is happening throughout Nottingham.
Hello, my name's Amanda and I'm a parent champion for Small Steps Big Changes. Some of the things I've enjoyed about working alongside professionals is knowing that our voice has an impact with not only families but within our communities as well. The more we've influenced and changed the system, the easier it became to challenge the system and the more our opinions and voices were respected. I've always held the belief that it takes a village to raise a child, and the aim of all the partners working with Small Steps Big Changes is to give those child that opportunity regardless of circumstance.
Parent volunteers in Nottingham have had their voice heard across Nottingham City in the following different spaces.
The true beauty and real benefits of building others up to work collectively in a co-productive manner results in everyone feeling a true sense of ownership of the work. This hugely influences the degree to which outputs are sustained. When empowering communities through co-production, we're truly working with and not to our communities. Central to collective working is ensuring power dynamics are shared. This encourages trust relationships to form and involves the mobilisation of others to take the lead, to steer discussion, planning and delivery. There are no two minds about this. Co-productive work involves letting go and can sometimes feel scary. Co-Create is the community funding arm of ABS in Lambeth that aims to encourage and support organisations and groups who may not normally think about or work in the early years space. A key value of this work concerns partners working co-creatively with their service users, delivering local level initiatives to benefit local children, their families and communities. As you'll see, the sharing of power for co-productive working can be challenging, but is certainly rewarding.
Our Co-Create project is called Choose What We Do. It's made me sit back, stop and think about, am I really consulting everyone? Am I really changing and shaping my service to what people want?
It's basically a 6-week healthy home cooking course.
I found that actually working directly with families is actually the best way to implement change really, and to listen to the parents, to look at their needs and to be able to adapt any course of training that will be providing to them. Zoe came with her own way and I realized that, yeah, but that's true. I mean, she had her own way of maybe seeing the program running that way. But me, I come with my own way.
Yeah.
And it is about to find that balance.
Yeah.
And I'm really thankful that she sensed that okay, I mean, she has a way, but she also found out that it might be different, but the outcome is still the same.
My funding is for 4 Co-Create courses, which are all about engagement and community and creativity. The end point is this cultural event, and because I don't know what this event will be yet, that could be seen as scary, but for me that's really exciting, because for me that is putting it back to the community. It is over to them really, and see collectively in the group what we come up with. And what I will do is keep it very safe. I'll facilitate the collaboration. What event are we going for? Is it achievable? You know, I'm confident in holding that decision together, and I'm excited because I have no idea what it will be.
It felt good to let families take control today, and what we did in our planning was not to preconceive what people would be expecting and wanting to do. It's harder, much harder work to do it that way, but it is incredibly important, and in this day and age I think we can't do enough of it.
Open to learning. The ABS programme has enabled sites across the UK to truly let go and experience co-productive working through creating a culture whereby there is support and freedom to really test and trial what works. While there are real benefits to be had when working co-productively with our communities, all ABS sites agree it doesn't always go to plan, but it's okay and can be valuable as part of the learning process. We'll now hear from Blackpool.
Well, Blackpool Football Therapy was started after lockdown in 2021, where basically myself and a couple of my close friends got a couple of footballs one day, went down to the park to play football. Obviously lockdown was difficult for a lot of people out there in the world, especially for myself, who has always been active throughout my life, and I just wanted to start playing football again. I was 38 at the time, struggles inside the house, not doing anything, looking at 4 walls. And we just basically got football and went down to the park. And it kind of grew from there. And literally on a weekly basis, people would join us. People we didn't even know who just say could join in. And it just built from there. Ever since, we've never looked back really. It's for dads and men of any age really. Predominantly it's over 35s, but we'd never say no to anybody out there at the moment. And it's just gone from there really. just basically trying to get out there, trying to get the men, the dads that just don't want to go out of the house, just to let them know that there's something out there that you can come and join with us and be a part of something which is special to all of us now.
A couple of lads were talking through the week and they wanted more than just the football. Being here, we get to meet an hour before the game. Since we started it, I think we had 3 lads on the first peer-to-peer, and as you've seen tonight, there was 30 lads sat there for an hour before we play, and they'll still chat after the game. So it's not an hour's football, it's more like a night.
Football therapy means a lot to me. I go to 2 sessions a week, just to maintain my physical well-being. I lost the use of my arm and my leg when I had a mini stroke, and the guys have just been so supportive for me. It's been really, really, really good for me, mentally and physically.
I've got a young family, I've got 4 children, so I've just never found myself in a social environment with other men, just to have a kick about, just general chit-chat. It's a very, very well-needed stress break.
It's emotional for me because I see the difference in the men that I deal with and speak to on a daily basis. If you've got a good project and you believe in what you're trying to do for the wider community and you're passionate about it, I'd apply straight away.
Creating lasting impact. Empowering communities through co-productive working can be highly effective when other key players are also invited to collaborate and involved in the development journey and decision making. Indirect benefits of working this way can see participants develop an improved understanding of community needs and challenges, as well as an appreciation of how local systems work and how navigating these can be difficult. Co-productive working, which involves a range of stakeholders, it can be powerful when informed by policy or aligned to existing agendas. It can also strengthen the likelihood of something being sustained or having a legacy. Creating lasting impact. Bradford. Over the years, Better Start Bradford have led a range of active co-production activities and engaged communities in the co-design of local projects. Examples of the impact of these include their Better Place project, which is responsible for identifying and overseeing improvements to local parks and outdoor spaces with the aim of providing a healthier and happy environment for babies, young children and families. As parents have been involved in the co-design process from the very start, many of them are now represented on local grassroots environmental groups and take community ownership of the spaces to maintain and develop them for hopefully years to come. Also, the co-design Moments That Matter video campaign features key messaging developed by parents and Bradford parents who actually film themselves. The campaign focuses on the everyday interactions that parents have with their little ones and how these are fundamental to an infant's future development and success. Parents involved wanted the campaign to be made for parents, by parents, non-judgmental, and not to see Instagram perfect parenting, because life isn't like that. Furthermore, Bradford recently redesigned their community engagement strategy, involving community members, practitioners and researchers collaborating virtually to learn from each other and to reshape the Better Start Bradford offering in the midst of the pandemic. Stakeholders shared experiences within the process and worked within the guidance of community-defined concepts of voice, choice and power. The discussions were fascinating and highlighted important learnings such as informal planning, an adaptive approach based on community need, ongoing consultation, assessment of people's readiness to engage, culturally sensitive and blended approaches to engagement. Overall, the impact of this is evident in the comprehensive community engagement logic model and strategy that allows for accountability, action planning, and the amplification of, in their own words, voice, choice, and power from the community themselves. This has influenced a sustainability plan to embed community engagement and co-production activities in the wider system, plus several research articles and dissemination reports. The following video highlights the work in Bradford. I'm now going to hand over to Victoria from Blackpool.
Thanks, Tanya. The final section of our talk will look at the impact on policy and practice of co-production before we head over to our Q&A session. As a collective of 5 sites that have a huge experience of working with and alongside our communities, we know that they strive to deliver in a co-produced way will achieve positive outcomes for the years to come. As organisations, we regularly attend community practice sessions that enable us to examine and add narrative to the change that we are seeing in our communities. And co-production is always mentioned as a catalyst at the heart of this change. Across the 5 sites, we are seeing the community take ownership of their neighbourhoods. Collectively, we are sharing the narrative experts by experience, whether that be a parent, a community member, or a member of the workforce. There is an equity of voice and power which builds meaningful relationships. There are a number of ways that co-production can be part of local, regional, and national practice. And you've heard some examples earlier in today's seminar. Not only is co-production pertinent to the Better Start ethos, ensuring we are doing with, whether that be parents, community members, or professionals, we are also passionate about sharing our learning and evidence in its efficacy. We hope that some of the examples we have just shared have started to do that already. Many people listening will be familiar with parents' forums and patient liaison groups when talking about audience involvement. But locally, for Better Start sites, full design, delivery, including spend and evaluation, involves our community. They are our favourite, but often most critical friend. Schemes discussed, such as Co-Create and Street to Scale, give community members budgeting powers where they lead on local delivery of community projects. We know that this approach creates services that fit the community, and using the framework discussed earlier in the presentation, we'd like you to go away and advocate for this practice in your area. In addition, co-production isn't just about working with the community. It involves co-producing and supporting stakeholders, such as health, social care, and early years professionals, including commissioners. These working groups lead in the design and delivery of services, ensuring we are maximising our local knowledge and expertise. The Better Start sites have found that working with stakeholders at the earliest opportunity in the process allows for limitations to be discussed before going live with projects and offers a wide pool of support to work out any solutions. Now we'll hear from a local commissioner and their perspective of the co-production process in Nottingham and how it's impacted on their area of work.
Health and care systems are changing fast. There's a big national push to design solutions together at local level, and partnership and co-production are central to that. So what do I think that co-production means? I think it means reimagining together how support can help people in the best ways at the best times, designing it with the people that are using it, the people that are providing it, and the people that are planning it and trying to put the resources in the right places. It's definitely not a one-off activity or something that you get totally right or wrong. It's about working in partnership from the start, asking questions together of each other and redesigning along the way, and trying to bring fresh perspectives in along the way as well. And co-production needs to work at a number of levels. So at that micro level, my example as a mum is when that magical health visitor came through the door when I was really struggling with my breastfeeding journey with my first child, and she worked with me and my family to put a plan in place for 2 weeks, and it really changed my breastfeeding journey around, and it was just great. An example at neighbourhood level is when we were designing our Small Steps Big Changes programme, was that a lot of families were telling us that we were designing support at the wrong time of day and making a lot of assumptions that didn't work for them. And so, of course, we needed to change a lot of that. And then thinking at whole city level for Nottingham, when we did a lot of mapping and talking with people, we realised that you might get some different support depending on where you lived, and that we needed to work together to deliberately choose a set of evidence-based best practice approaches for all of our babies and children, no matter where you lived. And that was a really great piece of work to do together. So I think it's about being really practical, sometimes being a bit messy and readjusting a lot along the way, but it's about working together and really staying focused on the outcomes that we want for our babies and children. And I'm really pleased to see at national level co-production is being embedded into all of the national policies that are emerging now, and that's really setting a platform for how we need to continue to work going forwards.
Regionally and nationally, our colleagues working in family hubs within Better Births Agenda and the integrated care systems are working towards agendas to ensure that parents and community members are intrinsic in the governance structure of these services. This is further encouraged in the Best Start for Life agenda, focusing on the early years of a child's life. We must ensure that babies and young children are also part of that process. We acknowledge that this is trickier than with older children. However, Better Start has supported consultations with young children about the designs of outdoor spaces, for example, or services that they attend. Facilitating children to have a voice and opinion at such an early age is vital for us to improve outcomes for children before they start school. Our aim is to have long-term impact on community leadership for generations to come. The voices of our communities that you'll see on the next slide highlight the drive for co-productive legacy. In addition to practical examples of co-production in recent years, there have been numerous examples of policy, guidance and legislation where the content and recommendations have been led by community members, people with lived experience and practitioners working in the field too. The NHS Good Practice Guidelines supporting the implementation of a trauma-informed care in the perinatal period is a perfect example of this. The guide was written with parents. We listened and talked about their experiences. They wrote the guide with us, giving us the recommendations present in the guide, whilst dovetailing the same conversations with the maternity workforce, a truly co-produced policy guideline. We hope today has given you some understanding, direction, and more importantly, the motivation to initiate co-productive practices in your workplace. Thank you to everyone for listening today, and we look forward to taking your questions in the panel now.
Hello, so thanks for that fantastic presentation. We're now going to have 15 minutes for Q&A, and I'm joined here by Fiona from Bradford, Jeff from Southend, Amanda from Nottingham, and Donna, so I can't actually see it, thank you. There's been lots of really interesting questions in the Q&A section, so I'm going to try and group some of them together. We won't be able to answer them all. So the first question is for you, Fiona. Just thinking about how we include seldom held communities, and if you can reflect and talk a bit about how you engage families with co-production and communities, and kind of what are the key aspects of that? How do you kind of make that happen?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Well, in Bradford, we work with some really diverse communities, and 30% of the Better Start Bradford area have actually got English as an additional language. So, you know, we've got so many new communities that are coming into Bradford. So I think what we've really had to do is build on the relationships that are already there with some of the grassroots organisations. So we work really closely with many voluntary and community centre groups, and we've actually developed something called the Neighbourhoods Project, so that we've got link workers that link into these different organisations and are often based at these organisations. And we've done co-production around the development of our community engagement strategy, and it really wasn't easy, and it wasn't always we couldn't always meet the expectations of the community. But I think one of the things that really helped was just by being really, really clear about what we were doing and making sure that we've got that two-way feedback loop. So even if we couldn't deliver things, we could say why, and we could continue to have that dialogue. So yeah, but I mean, in terms of engaging different communities, we've just really had to work collaboratively. We've had to make sure that we've got local people that are represented in our projects, that are representative of people that live in the area. That also, we're investing in interpreters, and we're also ensuring that we're engaging those community leaders and those people that are working with the new communities that are coming into Bradford. I think in terms of our governance structures as well, we ensure at Better Start Bradford that we've got 50% community board members and 50% other local professionals. And of course, it's just making sure that we're always having that dialogue, and that decisions from our partnership board and so on are being fed down to a grassroots level. So, so we can feed back on decision making through our volunteers, through the other community groups that we've got, through our community reference groups that we've developed, and through our neighbourhood workers.
Great, thank you, Fiona, thank you for that. And we're very pleased to have Amanda here, who is a parent from A Better Start Nottingham. Amanda, I wonder if you could tell us sort of directly from the horse's mouth, as it were, what your highlights have been as a parent that's been involved in co-production.
I think the highlights for me have certainly got to be the gaining in confidence when actually being in meetings and on boards with professionals, knowing that your voice is being more and more respected makes it easier to challenge certain aspects of it. And we've now, because we have been working with them for a long time now, that we can challenge back and forth. Before there was like a bit of a barrier almost that we could challenge, but they didn't feel like they could challenge back, and that actually put a barrier in being able to move forward on certain projects. So there's been a lot of learning on both sides, and I think seeing that progression and seeing and remembering how we were, like 5 and 6 years ago in co-production to looking at it now, it's absolutely amazing, and being able to be a part of that journey and see that journey has been fantastic. And it's certainly exciting to see what the next few years will bring within co-production as well.
And I don't know if you can say quickly what you think some of the skills that you've developed kind of being involved in this work.
I've got patience. I have actually found services never go as quick as a parent wants it to. It doesn't matter how much we nag at them. So patience was definitely my first one. And I think we've had to learn a lot of different skills along the way. We kind of dealing with different styles of people from across your community, and kind of broadening your experiences for your community as well. You're not just speaking for yourself. So there's been a lot of learning in that respect as well. And I'll be honest, acronyms, which by the way I think should be banned, and the SSBC team have now learned they actually put a key at the bottom of their paperwork if there is a lot of acronyms in their work, mainly just so I don't spend the whole meeting going, I don't know what that one means, and I don't know what that one means. So kind of understand a lot of the different jargon that you guys do absolutely love putting in paperwork. It sounds really impressive. Hoffers do not understand it. So kind of learning to read papers and respond to those papers in a professional way that means that your voice can be taken seriously, and it can then make the impact and the change that you want.
Great, thanks, Amanda. Jonathan, I'm going to come to you. There were some questions really around kind of the processes and structures, and how kind of maybe conflicts or disagreements can be overcome through those. And potentially there could be examples where parents are kind of asking or pushing for something that is kind of different or kind of challenging to implement. I wonder if you could reflect a bit on that, please.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I think Amanda's given a really good summary there in terms of that, getting to that stage where you're comfortable and confident enough to challenge effectively within that. And I think with this question, it's around acknowledging that conflict isn't always a negative thing. And sometimes having that conflict means that you're in a mature position where you can then really start to stretch different ideas, go outside of the, your comfort zones and sort of push each other. But I think you have to have the opportunity to have built that trust. And that means that you've got equal understanding of why each person's there, that central point of, although you might not come to the same agreement, you're all working towards that same aim. And then I think you start to build that trust, those challenging conversations develop, that conflict does happen, but it happens in a safe environment, and it isn't, there's that equal power with regards to that conflict. So I think that there's lots of things that you can do in terms of before people walk into the room, and that's both paid professionals as well as, the parent volunteers as well. And as I say, to acknowledge that and to embrace it, and actually it's probably more ineffective if you shy away from the conflict in the first place, or acknowledging that there will be conflict at some point along the way, and almost that's a marker that things are working well, because you're able then to work past that. I do think that there's the challenge that comes with that. We've discussed in terms of making sure that we've got really diverse groups and diverse lenses, that you have to already acknowledge that that is also a good thing as well. Nobody wants to have that echo chamber where everybody thinks everything's amazing and you all sort of head down the same path, which actually isn't quite what meets everybody's needs. So I do think it's a challenge, but it's one of those things that as long as you're open, honest, and supportive to everybody around that table and in those conversations, you can overcome it and develop some really strong opportunities for the future.
And just briefly, Amanda's here, obviously testament to your work. Can you just say briefly about how you go about developing skills and confidence in the parents that you're working with? Yeah,
I think it's starting with wherever that person's at, really, and having lots of different spaces that the interaction is valued. So some parents may well want to comment on a poster or wording that's used. Others, like Amanda, may well be able to come and speak at a conference like this or at a shared learning event, but there's equal value from the programme in whatever contribution that families make. So I think that that's been really important, that there's different structures that enable the individual to develop as well, and to recognise, as we do with paid staff members, there's a whole person there, and to acknowledge that there's lots of different elements that need that support. I think it's really important that there's time, consistency, and it's not tokenistic. And that means that you have that, I put my hand on my chest because I'm passionate about it, that you're invested in what you're doing and that you really understand the benefit of that co-production. It isn't something that you need to have achieved within that month because that's on your list. And I think that there's certain values that you have that you then bring to the table and enable that to happen.
Great, Donna, thank you. And finally, Jeff, I'm coming to you. So there was a question around what do you see, or kind of we see collectively more broadly, as the legacy opportunities for this amazing amount of co-production work that's going on across the A Better Start sites?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I mean, I think it's been one of the most important things about the A Better Start programme, that it's not just what we've done that's been important and the change we've had in influencing and affecting the lives of children and families, but it's also about the way that we've done it. And I think I genuinely believe that the very positive outcomes we've had across a range of measures with children and families would not have been achieved, or has been achieved as well, had we not been committed to working co-productively with citizens in the way we design, deliver services. And so I think that's a really important learning part. But talking to Donna and Amanda's point about the time that it takes that I think there's a Stephen Covey book, a management book, that talks about the speed of trust, and change happens at the speed of trust. And the first and most important thing that we have to do, and the lessons that we need to learn from this programme moving forward, is that we have to invest in building the trust between citizens, between services, and between system leaders, to make sure that we know each other, that we work well together, that we are familiar with the different needs and the different objectives and where we're coming from. And from that point, we then build into more collaborative processes and ways of being together in the space of designing and delivering services. And I think that's an absolutely key learning moving forward. And in Southend, we did a 2-week festival that was called our Festival of Conversations. And all we did in that 2 weeks was put people together in different spaces and different places with completely non-agendered conversations, simply having people or affording people the opportunity just to be together in spaces and talk. And I think it's, you know, with the imperative of delivering effective services efficiently and fast, we sometimes neglect the fact that we have to really invest in that relationship building. And I personally think it's one of the most fundamental learnings, certainly, that we've had in Southend, and I'm sure across the programme. You know, when we have parents like Amanda who are confident to sit in rooms with directors of public health or education directors or executive directors of NHS bodies, that is where the true value comes from, because then we get a real balance between the value of the expertise which parents and citizens bring into the processes and the value that the experts bring in who happen to have a professional qualification which gives them some knowledge and experience. And I think it's the bringing together of those two things which is absolutely key. And that, Laura, I think is one of the most profound pieces of learning from the whole of the ABS experience, I think.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for answering those questions. There's quite a lot of support in the chat, enforcing and endorsing the points that you've made. And there are still remaining quite a lot of questions in the Q&A, but we will answer those as best we can as part of the programme that's sent out from the event. So with that, with a spare 1 minute, I'm going to draw this first session to a close. It was a fantastic session. It was great to see the films and the videos from across all the different sites. So we now have a break of 15 minutes coming up, and please be back ready to start at 11:15. Thank you all very much.
Hi, I'm Alex Spragg. I'm the Programme Director for Better Start Bradford, and I'd like to welcome you to our second presentation, which is Changing Systems with a Focus on Evidence, Data and Outcomes. System change is one of the core Better Start programme outcomes, and it is anticipated and expected that the transformations that occur at local levels can contribute to wider system change in policy and practice. The sites have come together to provide examples of how the work we are all doing is bringing about changes within local systems, drawing out how different elements of the ABS approach apply evidence, data and outcomes to decision making. Amy MacDonald from Nottingham will share how co-production work has led to changes within the system. Josie from Bradford will discuss the application of a strong evidence and research base to inform and evaluate system change. Chris Wellings from Lambeth will talk about the test and learn approach that's been used across the programme. Annette Algie from Blackpool will share how data and evidence has supported innovation in service design and practice. And finally, Claire Littleford from Southend will talk about working within and building partnerships and how this has supported the programme to be a catalyst for change. I'm delighted to hand over to Amy from Nottingham.
Thank you, Alex. As we've heard during the first session, co-production is really central to the work of A Better Start. By actively involving experts by lived experience, services are shaped and improved and systems are changed. The value and importance of co-production is increasingly recognised across various sectors, with some key learning from A Better Start and co-production reflected in the Best Start for Life policy document. For all those working in early years, you'll know that this is a key policy developed in response to the Early Years Healthy Development Review, which outlines 6 areas for action to improve outcomes for all babies in England. A key facet of the policy, which will guide the areas for action, is establishing parent and carer panels to co-design services and feedback on them. This is a really exciting policy directive The ABS learning, as you've heard in the previous session, shows that by working through co-production, we will see an increased likelihood of developing services that are efficient and effective, that work for families in our areas, and by doing so, reduce inequalities. Across the 5 A Better Start sites, there's a commitment to utilising lived experience to improve services and systems. I'm now going to present a couple of examples of work that's happened here in Nottingham, which highlights how the views of those with lived experience are embedded across the system and are used alongside other forms of data and evidence to shape and improve services. Nottingham commissioned Quorum Family and Childcare to undertake a consultation with fathers locally. We spoke to 93 fathers. The findings from the consultation identified further opportunities for interdisciplinary working, and we've developed practical, low-cost solutions with the ambitions to improve care pathways for pregnant women, children and families. The consultation highlighted that fathers often miss out on practical information during the antenatal period. This information has now been included in a father-specific resource that will be given out by our midwifery and health visiting colleagues, ensuring dads get the information they need to be able to support good child development and also to keep their baby safe. The key findings are also actively being used across the system to influence various work streams, such as the safer sleep and breastfeeding, where we see practitioners, partnership colleagues coming together to work around certain areas. The findings from the consultation have been fed into these work streams and have been shared, meaning that dads' needs are considered as part of these work streams too. The consultation also identified opportunities for services to be more father inclusive, which has led to the development and refinement of standard working practices and policies. Another key thing that came out of the consultation was fathers' mental health needs are currently not being assessed and or met as frequently as fathers would have liked. These findings have been used, therefore, to shape the local perinatal mental health pathway. The next example that I'll move on to is another local example, and it really reflects how as a system we need to be agile, and when we think about changing through co-production, we need to do that in an agile way. Across the 5 A Better Start sites in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to utilise our resources and our existing links with researchers to consider how the pandemic had impacted on our local families, and really importantly to think how these findings could be used to help shape the recovery and response to COVID. In Nottingham, this work was undertaken by Nottingham Trent University, and they looked at the effects of COVID-19 on families with children under the age of 5 living in Nottingham. The key findings from these studies, this study is being actively used to influence the system and encourage the system to recognise children's needs as part of the recovery from COVID-19. Ways in which the findings are being used to influence the system include making representations to local authority and other policy makers. Examples of these include our local health and wellbeing board, and we've also shared the findings with the Children and Young People's Mental Health Inquiry that was run by the Health and Social Care Committee. The research also highlighted the impact of the pandemic and lockdown on wellbeing. So the findings again were used to guide local policy around the implementation of outdoor groups in a way to promote further wellbeing amongst our families. The other key thing that the findings have been used to do is really identify what future work needed to happen across the system to assess the impact of virtual delivery. I'm now going to hand over to Josie from Bradford.
Thanks, Amy. So myself, Chris and Annette are going to share with you some examples of how Better Start has enabled the use of strong evidence to both inform and impact on systems change across our areas. So the first example is from myself from Bradford, which is about the fact that there's been a long-standing ambition to increase integration across the agencies that are working with children and their families within Bradford. And as part of this, Better Start Bradford have been driving forward the goal of a shared child record where all information about a child and their family is shared between the services that are caring for them. Now, during the early years, children and their families receive care and support from multiple organisations, including health, children's services, educational settings, and other key services. However, as the messy image on the left of this slide shows, across the UK, this data is held in organisational silos and sharing is haphazard and weak, even when services are supporting the same family. For example, a midwife may know about a woman's previous traumatic history, but when the woman moves into health visiting care, they would have to repeat the same story or risk that the health visitors would not know some key information. Similarly, the police know about call-outs to domestic violence incidents, but other services would not necessarily know this. So in Bradford, we really want to move more towards the vision on the right-hand side, which is a single shared child record across organisations where the important information that's in the best interest of the care of the family can be shared across the services that are supporting them. And the partnership that Better Start has built across services in Bradford has really enabled us to take large steps towards this possibility by being able to nurture these relationships and co-produce this vision together. The strong research arm of Born in Bradford has been able to bring in additional funding to support this work through the UK Prevention Research Partnership Act Early funding, which is supporting system-wide changes, and the Department for Education funded Data Accelerator, which is helping to improve services by enhancing their data. So one of the first steps that we've taken towards the vision of a shared child record is to co-produce a 0 to 19 children and young people's shared outcomes framework. So this framework has been developed by Born in Bradford and Bradford Better Start with partners from maternity, health visiting, children's services, public health, police and wider partners. And the framework was based on the learning from Bradford and the wider Better Start sites about the importance of strong outcomes to measure children's outcomes within the early years, the existing evidence base of what the major drivers of inequalities in children's health and development are, and also the priorities of each of the services that were co-producing this work. So the aim of the outcomes framework was to enable in-depth locality-based needs assessment, to evaluate the impact of interventions by looking for improved outcomes over time, and also to act as a catalyst for the single shared child record across organisations. So we've used this outcome framework to gather data from all of the partners to provide a complete and comprehensive picture of the needs of children aged 0 to 5 from their perspective rather than the organisations. So we've combined information from all of the services into a single data set. And by we've looked at a ward level rather than at the district level to be able to find out differing needs based on localities and different levels of deprivation and cultural backgrounds within different areas of the city. One of the values of co-producing the outcomes framework was that we were able to select outcomes that organisations were already using in their own reporting. So we had the buy-in of all organisations to share this data, and it made pulling the data together so much easier, although it still wasn't that simple. So at the moment, what we did was ask for aggregate data so that there were no concerns around data protection or governance of the sharing of the information. So the findings of the 0 to 5 needs assessment show that when we look at data from the children's perspective, we found stark inequalities and different patterns of need that were not clear when we were using data from a single service or organisation. The needs assessment has also demonstrated huge differences in outcomes for children between affluent and deprived areas and varied needs based on the cultural and ethnic diversities of areas. And there's an example from 3 wards on the slide here. As one example of this, the average number of pupils that were achieving a good level of development in Bradford was only slightly lower than the England average, but the rates across wards varied from just over half in one of the Better Start wards to 86% in one of the more affluent rural wards. By looking at the other needs of children, we can start to understand the drivers of these poor outcomes, and we can identify the best early interventions to reduce these inequalities. These findings really do highlight the need for the levelling up agenda, but also how the outcome framework like this can be used to measure the impact of these initiatives. So in terms of the impact of this work locally, it's being used by children's services at the moment to drive the importance of the Best Start for Life policy that Amy's described already, to highlight the needs of our young children and push for additional funding to provide much needed additional support to these families. And as an example of this, some of the Better Start interventions have already been scaled up in other areas where there are high levels of need, and learning is now shaping future commissioning so that investment can focus effectively on addressing the identified needs. And it's also being used by the local prevention and early help team to select and implement appropriate support in each locality. So in sum, by demonstrating the value and impact of this shared data, this work is really acting now as a catalyst to drive forward the vision of a single child record. And we've now got a working group of partners and researchers from Bourne and Bradford who are really committed to building this within the local system. So watch this space and we should have something to share in the future. I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who's going to share some learning about the impact of evaluation on the system from Lambeth.
Thank you, Josie. Okay, so test and learn is an approach that involves testing ideas at a small scale before embedding changes more broadly. So it helps provide really timely and relevant information for service providers so they can learn about and adapt their services. Now, for all the Better Start sites, test and learn is a key approach that helps ensure we're continually improving services. The diagram on this slide shows the Dartington Service Design Lab's rapid cycle design and testing method. Step one is when organisations assess and understand the context in which their service or their service adaptation is or will be delivered. Step two is about designing the service adaptation and the associated tools and processes. Step three is when we put the new approach into practice and collect data to see how it is working. Step four involves analysing the data to see what it tells us about the effectiveness of the service adaptation. And step five is when we make decisions about next steps. Now, the development of a strong data infrastructure is a crucial foundation for work around test and learn and data-informed decision-making. In Lambeth, every service receives a standardised quarterly report with comprehensive data on their delivery. And the next couple of slides, this slide and the next slide, show extracts from these reports. The full reports cover which families are using the service, how these families are engaging with the service, what families think of the service, and the intermediate and longer term outcomes. We have also established a data integration platform that links person-level data across our entire portfolio of services. The platform, which incorporates local administrative data sets so that we can compare the progress of service users with non-service users, is a key tool for understanding and improving the broader Lambeth early childhood system. Now, alongside the production of these reports, we're creating regular opportunities for learning and reflection at the level of individual services, clusters of services, and the programme as a whole. Through these sessions, service providers and wider groups of practitioners identify areas for improvement and establish pilots to test and learn about new approaches. Our overall vision is to create a data-informed learning culture where reflection and adaptation are an integral part of the local system. There's really strong synergy here with the Department for Education's vision for family hubs, with data on the user experience and on outcomes in those projects being used to evolve the approach. In Lambeth, we want every service and the wider system to be on a continuous improvement journey, becoming ever more responsive to the needs of local families and ever more effective at improving child and family outcomes. I'm now going to hand over to Annette from Blackpool.
Thank you, Chris. As Josie has described, in Bradford, the shared child data system links routinely collected data to give rich insight into the journeys for children and their families, helping to plan better services for those involved. And Chris has described how this is used in a test and learn cycle to better improve the provision locally. All Better Start sites have committed to the collection of data and evidence to demonstrate the impact of focused provision in the early years and to be the catalyst for local systems transformation. At a local level, this can be translated into better decision making around priorities of provision for children and families. And wider, this knowledge can be used to support national policy decision making, as we've heard, in relation to government initiatives such as the Levelling Up Agenda and Start for Life policies. In Blackpool, the Data Linkage Project enables data held in health and social care systems to be linked with service attendance data. This provides us with knowledge for the partnership to monitor the demand for services and supports understanding on the immediate and future outcomes and impact from those benefiting from services, thus helping us to improve the overall quality of what we deliver and ensure we're targeting at the right places. The data is held securely for us by the NHS, where midwifery, hospital and health visiting data across a number of metrics are matched at child level. Linked to this administrative data are the details of individuals who attended our funded services. This linked data, viewed in aggregate groups of individuals, allows us to compare at ward level, both in relation to the outcomes for those groups and also the impact for those groups of receiving services. This data, although has limitations as wider factors around the family and causality are not known, does show us general trends and supports the partnership to make decisions around the systems which support children and families. Population level data in the early stages of the funding supported the identification of needs and helped us with our service design processes. Once services were established, the data and evidence further supported the scale-up of services and, where necessary, the decommissioning of services. As we move into the final years of our funding, this data and evidence is critical to the sustainability and legacy of the project. An example of this approach is the scale-up of Baby Steps antenatal provision in Blackpool. As Chris has shared, the test and learn approach, which many sites have taken, requires comprehensive data to take these informed decisions. In Blackpool, this approach was integral to the scale-up of our antenatal provision across the town. Baby Steps was originally developed by the NSPCC to be a targeted services for vulnerable parents. Through the Better Start funding, Blackpool Better Start committed to offering this very evidence-based programme to all parents living in the Better Start wards as the universal offer for antenatal education. The data that we collected in those early years demonstrated that the outcomes for participants were comparable to those seen in the national programme evaluation, with benefits for both mother and child, and also that it was acceptable to participants and that the numbers were good of attending. This data was then shared with the Blackpool Better Start Executive Board, which both the Commissioner and the provider of 0 to 19 services sit on. By sharing the learning in this way, a decision was made to scale up the provision across the town, replacing any previous antenatal education offered. This continued success in April 2020 led to the provision of the service being transferred over from the NSPCC to Blackpool Teaching Hospitals, and meaning it was fully embedded within their Community Health Services team. Public Health, as the commissioner for the provision, also included this service within their 0 to 19 contract. Without the data and evidence from our data linkage project, making such decisions is difficult. Although this process spanned a 5-year period, the ambition is that with the data now held within the warehouse, a similar approach can be taken to in relation to other funded services, supporting sustainability decision-making and support local systems change required to enable the legacy of Blackpool Better Start. I'm now going to hand over to Claire from Southend to talk more about partnership approaches.
Thanks, Annette. As the ABS programme matures and we start to think about the ongoing legacy of our work, we've come to recognise that system change is really fundamental to ensuring that the impacts of a Better Start really last. By changing systems that early years services are provided within, we can build the Better Start approach into those systems. And through that, we can ensure that projects and services are sustainable beyond the end of the funding period. We can also ensure that the great gains that have been made by the Better Start programme across a whole range of outcomes are maintained and continue into the future, rather than risking them falling back in the absence of the Better Start programme. We can also ensure that family and community voices remain at the centre, because this approach is built into the way we expect our systems to work. Our partnership approach is really central to this, and the numbers on this slide really demonstrate what that partnership approach involves, with our partners within a Better Start based across multiple disciplines and themselves working within multiple systems. This can be a challenge, but we've also found that it's an opportunity to reshape systems and ways of working, to include parent voices and to meet the needs of our families. A Better Start can be an example within those different systems, enabling us to spread the successes we've had into the different areas our partners work within. This means that we can demonstrate the importance of using evidence to inform our decision-making and our actions. We can advocate for co-productive ways of working that really centre that lived experience that's been so vital to developing our programmes. We can provide relevant local examples of successful change that can therefore be more tangible and achievable because they relate more closely to the systems that we're looking to influence. And we can create trust in the ABS approach by working alongside other organisations or systems and demonstrating through action the value of our approaches. All of this together creates an opportunity for a Better Start to be a catalyst for systems change at a broader level, whether that's a geographical level or across different service areas, or reaching into new organisations and potential partners, and also carrying that into the future. One example of what this approach looks like in reality is the work that Southend is doing with the Mid and South Essex Integrated Care System. The ICS has formed from a number of different organisations and partners, many of whom have not recently worked with each other to this extent. As one of the partners in the ICS, A Better Start Southend is working with the ICS on the development of a new children and young people care plan for the region. ABS within this is a trusted neutral party. It means that we can bring together these disparate partners who come from very different organisations and different parts of the region, each coming with their own cultures and ways of working. As that neutral party, we can create a safe space where new relationships can be developed between the partners. We also bring our experience of co-production and the centering of those family and community voices and experiences, as well as a fresh approach to system change at a time when the system itself, the ICS, is being fundamentally changed. The work we're doing is mapping out what that changed landscape looks like and what the key priorities are within it. We're identifying challenges and opportunities arising from this new landscape. And we're providing evidence around the kinds of models that have been used elsewhere to provide children and young people services. This has come from some original research carried out by the University of Essex as part of the Better Start partnership in Southend. Our approach to partnership working and systems change means that we're able to make a positive contribution to the wider landscape of service provision in our region beyond the boundaries of Southend. We're able to bring together these disparate partners and provide them with the tools and the evidence that they need to work together. But we can also provide them with that neutral space where they can build this new partnership, really from very positive groundwork. And really, it's those partnerships and relationships and those ways of working that are the key outcomes from this work, rather than the plan itself. It's about how people work together to identify what needs to be done and to build on the evidence that's already out there. So thinking about the impacts and the implications of this whole presentation has really brought out a lot of ways in which a Better Start can be a catalyst for change. And we've heard lots of examples about how this can work from across all 5 Better Start sites. Through the approaches that our programmes take, we can provide better information, which underpins the design of everything we do. Based on that quality information and insight, we can make better decisions, which in turn lead to the development and delivery of better services. And through our ways of working, we can develop better systems. Taking all of this together will lead to better outcomes for children and families in our communities, which is the entire aim of a Better Start. Thank you to everyone for listening today, and we look forward to taking your questions in the panel. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for that presentation. We're now going to take a number of questions that have been put in the Q&A. Just before I do that, I just want to clarify that there will be a report that comes out following the event. The event's also being recorded and that will also be shared. But for people who are asking for some information about the specific examples, that information will be provided in the report. So please don't think we're ignoring your questions. We will be providing further information about how you can find out about some of the specific examples that have been shared across the presentations. So first of all, I want to draw on a question that came up actually as a result of the policy discussion around how we can support the cooperative working at the ICP level. And obviously drawing on Claire's example in her presentation, just want to see if you can share, Claire, a little bit about how Southend are actually helping to facilitate some of that cooperative working.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is that when you do have large groups or large organisations or lots of different organisations working together, it can be a challenge. I think it is important to recognise that. I think the way that we're seeing this work is by thinking about how those organisations can work together as kind of the starting point, rather than thinking about what it is they're trying to do. ABSS obviously has places a great deal of emphasis on co-production and including the voices of families right at the heart of all of our decision making. And I think we're just kind of carrying that principle through, so that when we look at how different organisations can work together, we're looking at, okay, what are the needs and the points of view and the expertise of those different organisations, and how can they come together in a way that creates a shared vision so that they're all kind of heading towards the same place. And actually, the strengths that each of them bring to that as well. So it's in a way, it's very similar to the way we would approach including parents, but it's about including organisations rather than individuals. And it does require each of those partners to kind of sign up to that way of working. So it is in effect partnership working, but in quite a specific way that really thinks about what everybody wants to bring to the table and what needs they have as part of that. And really then from there, once you've got that kind of common ground in place, it makes it much, much easier, I think, to work towards the actual details of what it is that the group's trying to do.
Thanks, Claire. Couple of the other questions are drawing very much, Josie, on your element of the presentation. And kind of a key question there is about how can we help statutory organisations see the lived experience, and how can we make sure that that is influencing decision making rather than just kind of the financial side of things. But there's also another question a little bit about how we can give space for our kind of reflection and learning. And I just wondered if you could kind of draw on all of that in your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I just need to echo what Claire said, really, because I think for any of these things to work, it's about all of the key elements coming together, isn't it? So it's about that working with partners. It's about going on the journey together, really. So it's, you know, not doing things and then just handing them over, but it's, you know, it's people's buy-in along the journey as well that makes such a big difference. So in our work in Bradford with the data and the outcomes framework, we've been building it together with our partners. So obviously we have that strong research focus, but obviously through Better Start Bradford, we have all of the key partners from Children's Services, from local NHS partners. And so the outcomes that we chose and the needs that we've looked at are ones that are important for them, and that they are part of their sort of key performance indicators. They're elements that they really need to report on and look at anyway. So by doing that, and I think then by sharing the data at quite I mean, we've only got aggregate data, so it's not individual, but it feels much more sort of personable because you're talking about children in a particular area. It actually it's had quite an impact, and I think it's challenged a lot of people's assumptions. I think things are a lot worse than some people thought they were in particular areas, and things have changed in other areas from the last time they thought they'd looked at the data. It doesn't take away from the fact that finances are a massive constraint at the moment, and they're certainly unlikely to get any better anytime soon, unfortunately. But I think it's an element of, you know, that they've co-produced this with us, and I think we've asked from them now, from their commitment, and this is from senior members of each of these organisations, their commitment to actually take what we've done and use it to understand more about their localities. So number one, getting that context locally to understand what is happening there and why these outcomes are particularly bad in some areas. Number two, to be committed to looking at how you can change the services on offer locally to address some of these key issues. And I think then that goes into the question from Emily, which is about having that time for reflection and learning. And that's us pushing back now and asking for commitment from senior members to allow their staff on the ground to do that. And I guess it's just a multi-pronged approach, isn't it, really? So it's about the data, but it's also about your community, and it's about informing them. It's about informing councils, it's about informing services as well, so that everybody is on the same page and wanting to do the same things. There's no magic financial solution, is there? But I think it's about that, building the journey together, really.
Thanks, Josie. Chris, particularly thinking about the test and learn approach that you shared, is there anything that you can add in terms of that kind of that reflective and learning space and being able to create that across the partnership?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I mean, we do a number of things, as Josie said. So, you know, we have regular review sessions for services. We've got regular provider events so that all practitioners from our different services can come together. We're also with our local evaluators, the Dartington Service Design Lab, so in the process of establishing action learning sets. So these sessions are all underpinned by an acknowledgement that that reflecting about what is working and what is not working, and about what we're learning, is a really essential activity, and something that is very much worth the time allocated, and something that needs to be about learning rather than being limited to performance.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. And again, I think it's insightful as to how kind of different strands of what we're doing are also creating that, but involving again the people, the very decision makers that people are asking us questions about as part of that process. I think that is something that is really critical to this. Again, we obviously talked about co-production, and there's a particular focus around involving our communities in that, but it's also about how we involve, as Claire kind of referenced, those wider partners in that work. Josie, and I think no surprise really, because of kind of the potential impact for a shared child record. There've been quite a few questions very much about both the barriers and the facilitators to making that happen, and then obviously its the potential for it to be shared more widely. Do you want to be able to kind of give us a little bit of the journey you've kind of taken so far, and what we hope its trajectory kind of will be?
Yeah, I think that's my first get out clause, is that this is very much a work in progress. So we use the outcomes framework and the needs assessment as almost a test, sort of a way to sort of a proof of concept, you might like. So something that shows the value of looking at things from a child's perspective. We have not yet gone down the route of these, the data sharing agreement, the legal things about being able to connect children's records at that level. I think the broad overlying learning I would have is that I think people really need to change their mindset from this, like, we must protect children's data, to actually we must protect the child. And the best way to protect the child is for everybody to know what's happening to that child. So if they've had a visit from the police to the house, their health visitor knows that. And it sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, but I think the focus in the past has always been protect data. And that's not always in the best interest of the children or the family, is it? And I like the question around the unique identifier. I think that's a dream. So we know that in obviously the NHS, there's NHS numbers. In early education, well, in education settings, there's a unique pupil identifying number. You can link them, but then other services, especially the ones like Better Start are delivering, people don't know their NHS number, and so they just come to it and they get an ID number there. But linking that and making sure that we're following the same people is a huge challenge. We've got lots of methods that we've used to overcome that, but it's not easy. So a single identifier would be phenomenal. But obviously I'm happy to talk more, but I don't want to take up all the time talking about boring legal stuff.
Okay, I'm just trying to. Does anybody else have anything about? I mean, again, obviously we've talked very specifically from a Brad perspective, but I know that other people are also using kind of pulling data together. Obviously, Annette, you referenced that within the journey that you took. Are there any kind of barriers or facilitators that you've specifically identified in Blackpool, or want to talk more broadly about in terms of how you've pulled your data information together to then help to inform that work in partnership?
So I can see there's a couple of questions around this asking who pulls the data together, where is the data stored? So in Blackpool, the approach that we took, because of a lot of the data governance, and as Josie's touched on, some of the heightened worries that people have about sharing data and the perceived risks that they see with that, we actually chose to store our data in the teaching hospitals, Blackpool teaching hospitals, as I described. So it's NHS data systems that are storing our data in a data warehouse. And enabling us to do that meant that we had to employ NHS staff to access the data. So there are barriers there, but there are also ways around it. And similar to how Josie's described, the data that then comes out to us is at aggregate level. We see it in broken down into subsections of those who've attended our services, those who haven't, broken down at ward level, but we are still seeing that data not at individual line level, but at aggregate. Now, it's all in the warehouse, and the good news is that we are now getting to a point where we're looking at a de-identification process to view that data at individual line level. which will give us a lot more rich insight into that particular data on the child and the journey over the 6 years that we've been storing the data in that way. So we're getting to a point where we can really get down to the depth of why changes are happening for certain children and not for others. So we're almost there, but certainly I think in relation to the system side of it, I think we are still a long way off this shared data system, which we all know would make such a difference for more researchers to have access. And we are in Blackpool very much working through the NHS systems to do that for us.
Thanks, Annette. Claire, again, knowing that you're from a research and evaluation focus as well, is there anything that you want to add in? Because I think that people are really quite, there's quite a lot of, in both the chat and the questions, around where we pull our information from and how we're kind of using that to be able to pull that forward.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a few different things in Southend. So, I mean, one of the challenges that all of the sites have faced over the last couple of years during the pandemic was that some of the data that we really rely on to measure impact hasn't been collected. So in particular, the early years foundation stage profile, which is a measure that's collected in the first year of primary school or reception year at primary school. So that wasn't collected. So we've been kind of thinking about alternative places that you can get data from. I mean, as Annette mentioned, I mean, a lot of the data that we look at is at the aggregate level. We don't really do any kind of connecting up on individual level, although that's something we're beginning to look at with the development of a new record management system. But really, we're looking at aggregate data. So we've been looking at alternative data places where we can sort of compare different kinds of outcomes. So we managed to add some questions to a Southend-wide survey that Southend City Council have put together, which ties into some questions that are included in our independent evaluation work, and also ties into a big national survey called Understanding Society, which has a big national sample. So we're starting to explore whether we can find out things by doing that kind of alternative use of data. So it's a bit different to the approach of trying to link up education and health data and that kind of approach. And it's much more descriptive about what's going on at ward level rather than looking at what's happening at individual level. But that's kind of a slightly different approach to it, really.
And going back to Joseph, there's a question which I think is really, is really important about how we make data easier to understand and more palatable. Because I think, and I mean, think the diagram that you showed with the different children's experiences is a good example of that. But obviously, that is something that we've had quite a lot of conversations with, both within our own site, but I know across sites in terms of that how we get across some of both the learning, but also, you know, what we know about the families and communities that we're working with.
Yeah, and I think probably all of us on here would echo the fact that data is really complicated and it's really hard to make it simple, but that's absolutely critical. And I think one of my favourite things is going to our community research advisory group and getting them to absolutely pull apart what we've done and make it useful. And so I think it's just thinking about, yeah, how you do that. So really helpful infographics. And just, you know, just giving the absolute highlights and then the opportunity to delve deeper as needed. But again, this is something we're still trying to get our head around because there's so much information. It's really hard to make it manageable.
I think sorry, Alex, if I could just pick up on what Josie said then. Somebody in the chat as well asked a question about how do we present the data to boards, and I think we fell foul in some of the earlier years of Better Start where we were presenting a lot of data each quarter at our quarterly governance meetings, and actually presenting too much can sometimes have a detrimental effect. So we've moved very much towards really focusing annually at everything, and that's, you know, we have to do that. We have to report everything we do on an annual basis because we need to look at the journey travelled. But within quarterly governance meetings and quarterly reports that we present, we very much hone in on key pieces of information and move that focus around to make sure that the data is really telling the accurate story, because sometimes looking at it too often, you start to read different meaning into it. So it's really important to really prioritise what messages that we are delivering with the data.
No, I think that's really important, Annette, in terms of, again, the quality and the quantity, and it is so key. And it, whilst, you know, we could, and again, we've been resourced to have a huge amount of information available to us. It is about how we then support the journey of that information, and then can obviously share that with our colleagues more widely, so that can kind of be built into things going forward. I'm just aware of time in terms of moving on to the next thing. So I think we will leave it there. As I said, there will be a report that comes out after the event. So we will certainly do our best to answer any questions that we haven't answered through the information that is shared in there. But just want to thank obviously the panel for answering the questions, but also most importantly, the participants who've been posing them, because it really does help us to think about what's important in terms of how we communicate the things that are, you know, kind of happening within our sites, so that actually, again, we can help all of you guys to make the biggest impact for children and families. So we'll leave it there. We are going into another very short break, just to give you a chance to have a quick comfort break, and then we'll be going on to the third session in terms of the learning from the 5 sites. That's focused very much on mobilising the workforce and the community. So we'll see you all at 12:15. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, it gives me great pleasure to chair the final session this morning, which is all about the importance of mobilising the workforce and our community. My name is Claire Law. I am the Director of the Centre for Early Child Development, which drives the Better Start Partnership in Blackpool. Presenting today as part of this session is David Wood from Lambeth, Melanie Farman from Blackpool, Julie Lannan from Southend, Amanda Boyle from Nottingham, and Kerry Bennett from Bradford. So workforce and community development has always played a central role in A Better Start. It's vital that we support and enable our communities to gain new skills, to become volunteers and gain employment. And it's also crucial that we provide quality services through a well-trained and supported workforce. And I think the pandemic has really shone a light on just how important the support element of that really is. What you'll hear today from our team is how A Better Start is not only about upskilling the early years workforce, therefore, and our local communities, but it's also about how we support and how we care for those people who are integral to shaping the futures of babies and young children. You'll hear how different approaches are working across the 5 sites, some inspirational stories, but you'll hear how all of the different and diverse work is grounded in our 4 golden threads of educate, connect, nurture, and sustain. So whilst what we do may be different, the way that we do it is consistent. You'll also hear about the implications that our work is having and will continue to have on policy and practice, and that while science and evidence-based programmes are important, the way that we deliver our services and who delivers our services has an important role to play. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce David from Lambeth to start the presentation.
Thank you, Claire. To begin, if we consider the historical context of the programme, since ABS's inception, austerity has had an impact on funding streams that support the workforce across all public and voluntary and charity sector service delivery, including many early intervention services that fell outside of statutory legislation. The pandemic has also created challenges, as some sites experience a redeployment of NHS staff and voluntary and charity sector service delivery. But there have been benefits in that blended delivery and virtual training opportunities have become more commonplace. However, the childcare sector has been severely disrupted and stretched by the pandemic. This has sometimes meant a struggle to maintain communication, language and literacy programs within private, voluntary and independent settings, with a higher turnover of staff and limited capacity to participate in ABS activities. We recognise that this is a national issue, not just in ABS sites. So why workforce and community? The rationale for combining them is because by both sectors working together, the chances of achieving lasting change are increased, taking a collective approach to improve outcomes for young children and their families. All of the ABS sites have made efforts to move away from a them and us attitude, ensuring community and parent voice is part of a combined dialogue in its approaches to working with families and communities. Many services include a volunteer element that provides opportunities for local community members to be part of this transformational programme. As you've already heard in the previous presentations, ABS sites have an emphasis on ensuring parents' voice is strong through the development, implementation and delivery of all Better Start activities, and volunteering is a key strand of this work. So who are the workforce? When we use the term workforce, it encompasses a wide range of partners, including health providers, such as health visitors, midwives, GPs, speech and language therapists, local authority staff, including children's centre workers, childcare settings from the private, voluntary, independent, statutory sector, and VCS or voluntary and community sector partners, as well as other statutory partners such as the police and housing. We also include volunteers as part of the workforce, many of whom are parents that are able to share their experiences to benefit other families. Volunteer programs across ABS sites include a wide range of roles, including parent champions, food ambassadors, breastfeeding peer supporters, parent ambassadors, literacy volunteers, community champions, perinatal support volunteer befrienders, volunteer doulas, plus many more. So whilst the delivery programs vary across the 5 ABS sites, there is a consensus that the following objectives have informed the approach, mobilising the workforce and the community. So primarily that there is a shared vision for children and families across the system and a joint approach for realising this vision. That there will be more integrated planning and delivery of services and resources for children and families. That there will be opportunities for improved workforce skills and expertise. And lastly, that there is an improved service provision and quality. We thought it'd be useful to share the scale of the ABS workforce. As you can see from the chart on this slide, the workforce has broadly continued to increase until financial year 2020-21, amounting to 431 roles covered by ABS funding, as outlined by the pink bar. Unfortunately, 2020-21 also saw a reduction in volunteer engagement as seen in the orange bar, primarily caused by the impact of the pandemic. And this slide gives an example of one of the site's activities that have taken place since ABS commenced in 2015. Whilst there are different programs across the different sites, there are generally common themes, for example, trauma-informed practice. So I'm now going to hand over to Melanie from Blackpool to introduce the 4 golden threads of the ABS approach.
So thank you so much for that, David. We really appreciate that great start to this presentation. So we're really privileged to share with you today what A Better Start has accomplished over the last 7 years. We found 4 golden threads that weave through A Better Start approach to successfully mobilising the workforce and the community, and which you can see here on the slide. So we will share key messages from each of these golden threads, and we will bring these to life with examples from across the sites. So the first golden thread that we're going to share with you today is the one of educate. And the key message here is the importance of investing in and valuing the workforce and the community. We know historically that when there has been substantial investment in early years, that this has shown a significant narrowing in aspects of childhood inequalities. So prioritising early years has really shown to reduce inequalities in childhood. For example, in the past, when this has happened, child poverty rates fall, rates of low birth weight and infant mortality decline, and foundation stage profile results improve.
So we have found the following that we'd like to share with you, the 4 key points. 1, that offering training to all the early years workforce provides opportunity for shared learning, shared vision, shared understanding, and consistency through a shared language. And number 2 is that COVID has brought about new ways of working that have actually, those benefits have been shown to having this blended approach. Number 3 is that understanding what works on the ground and that real life practice is crucial. And that number 4 is that the importance of all of us understanding our roles in early childhood and how to support this, it really helps to achieve better outcomes. So all the 5 Better Start sites have really excellent examples of how they have invested in and value the workforce and the community. And the impact this has, but the 2 that we're going to highlight today are from Blackpool and Lambeth. So Blackpool is committed to ensuring the current and future workforce has high access to high quality learning and development opportunities in order to raise awareness of early child development, brain science, and the impact of early adversity. Through dedicated trainers, the early years workforce are offering training and development opportunities, and they're doing this ensures the key Better Start messages and programme of learning events are provided in order to meet the needs of the local workforce and the community. So one training opportunity that our workforce has embraced is the brain game and the brain story. So there is a commitment to building a workforce and community that understands and values the importance of that shared language that we spoke about earlier. Let's just take a few moments to watch a video that brings this commitment to life about how Blackpool Better Start have worked in collaboration with the Palix Foundation and Amberta Wellness Initiative to share the brain story.
When we brought Better Start to Blackpool, we started working with experts from across the world. And one group of experts we worked with was the Palix Foundation in Alberta in Canada. So when they brought their brain story to us, it resonated very strongly with our local community and with the professional services across the public sector here. So we've been using that evidence to embed within our own approach.
Blackpool as an area is extremely deprived. If you look on the national scale, 8 of the top 10 wards in the country for deprivation are located within Blackpool. Then the Palix Foundation came to Blackpool and we listened to what they had to say, and from that moment in time we decided we were going to educate our officers around what exactly that meant.
My name is Alan Stein. I am Professor of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at the University of Oxford. Much of my work revolves around the early years and early years development. And all of that has been beautifully conceptualized within the brain story in a very elegant way, but taking key core scientific concepts and developing it for the implementation throughout the community in a way that is easily understandable by people.
So we use the brain architecture game as a metaphor to explain the difficult scientific messages about brain development. We liken building brains and developing children's brains to how we build a house, and we use metaphors such as building houses, serve and return, air traffic control, resilience scale, in order to get those quite difficult scientific messages across to the community in a way that they will understand.
So my name's Darren Johnson and I'm a father of an 8-month little girl who arrived in February. I've came today with my daughter to experience the brain game. I have learnt a lot from today, which I will take home with me. You know, from some of the stuff we've learnt about how important it is to have the support and structure early on in our child's lives, and how that can be instrumental as the child gets older. And if the more support they have, the longer, stronger of that support they've got throughout within the community and the parents as a whole, the better start they have.
Feedback overall was how important it was that we all take responsibility for building children's brains. It's not just mum and dad, it's the wider community, and we've all got a role in doing that.
My name is Elizabeth Rapper and I'm a researcher at the University of Oxford, where I work in the Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Group. What's really been great in the last few days here is seeing all the success that the Brain Story has had in Alberta, and then seeing it firsthand here in Blackpool, that the Brain Story as a tool is completely transferable, and the success of it is regardless of context, regardless of environment, regardless of country.
We can use the story of the developing brain and utilise the evidence that they've generated over there, but take those ideas and take those concepts and work with local parents, local families, and think about how we integrate all of that learning into our local community. We believe that this should be able to work absolutely anywhere in the UK. If we can do this in Blackpool, then it is absolutely doable anywhere.
So, as our director expressed there at the end of the video, if this is doable in Blackpool, then it's doable anywhere. So the next example that we're going to share with you is from Lambeth. So this example demonstrates how important investing in and valuing our workforce is. And this short video really highlights how Lambeth have helped to embed the family partnership model and demonstrates a commitment to the workforce and to relationship building. So let's share this video together now.
My work with LEAP has been about strengthening and further developing the offer for parents in Lambeth in regards to parenting support. The family partnership model is an evidence-based way of working with parents as practitioners. And the key thing about the family partnership model is the word partnership. So that dictates the relationship that a practitioner has with the parent they're supporting and ensures they're working alongside them in a partnership relationship. LEAP enabled us to train a broad range of practitioners within the Better Start workforce, not just practitioners who are working one-to-one in a caseload capacity with families, but also practitioners who are supporting those families with in-play sessions, over the telephone, just the people that meet and greet you when you enter a children's centre, to ensure that all of those different practitioners have the same approach, are keeping parents at the centre of what they do, are meeting the parents with a partnership relationship and empowering parents to be the parents they want to be for their families. And if LEAP hadn't created that opportunity for us, it's not a model we'd have been able to put in place in the borough. There just isn't the funding to do so. So we're really grateful for LEAP to have enabled that change. Other models that people might have used in the past don't have that same focus on the relationship building at the beginning of the helping process. With LEAP enabling the family partnership model in Lambeth, that has allowed us to invest in relationship building with parents and provided us with an evidence base for why we need to do that. So now in Lambeth, we're looking at how we can build the family partnership model more closely into our management information systems so that we can report more effectively on the changes that we're making for families and enable better reporting so that we can see the difference that's being made through family partnership model work across the borough.
So both the Blackpool and the Lambeth examples shown here today show how when a workforce and community embrace a shared language, it enables sustainable change. So through investing in and valuing all areas of the early years workforce and community, this has really led practitioners and parents feeling empowered to be the practitioners and parents they want to be. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Julie, who's going to share with us the golden thread of Connect.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm going to talk about the value of being connected. By harnessing our networking opportunities and linking different services, a Better Start sites have a broad reach across a wide range of partners. All of the sites have developed different ways to create networking opportunities and to link to different services. but there are also some common features. Each of the sites have held workforce or provider events, as well as conferences which have enabled a wide range of workforces that may not usually meet each other to network, build relationships and share information about their services and reinforce referral pathways. Some of the sites have created community connector roles. In Blackpool, community connectors are local parents who are advocates for Blackpool's work, their values and their principles, and are trained to connect with families so that they are better linked to other families and to the community resources they need to make positive parenting choices for themselves. The connector team includes community, health, and dad connectors. Connections are made in Southend through the recruitment of parent champions and parent ambassadors. They are trained by Southend Association of Voluntary Services and connect with their communities to share the work a Better Start programme has to offer them. Parent champions are involved in all co-production work and sit on boards at all governance levels as equal partners around the table. Nottingham's approach also includes parent champions and parent ambassadors. They are elected to their position and receive training and support from the Quorum and Family Childcare. Parent champions and ambassadors help the team to shape services that people in their communities want and need. These roles present fantastic opportunities for the Small Steps, Big Changes partnership to be able to connect communities as well as an individual's personal development. The parent ambassadors also sit on the Small Steps, Big Changes board meetings and even chair them. To enable networking and shared learning opportunities, Nottingham offer community partnership meetings regularly, where workforce and parent champions come together to give updates on their services and discuss items related to the local community. Having opportunities like this can prevent duplication of work and strengthen referral pathways. Through shared training events, Nottingham have adopted a style of co-facilitating sessions across the city. They invested in training the workforce on the Triple P programme. So with collaboration, different levels of this programme are delivered jointly with family mentors, early help and 0 to 19 services. Likewise, the Your Family programme in Southend has invested in providing integrated training to the workforce. And I will now go into more detail about the Your Family approach. Bringing all that has been said so far together leads me nicely on to the new Your Family programme in Southend. It has been difficult to describe as Your Family is not a traditional service, rather it is a community, co-designed by parents and partners, and is a strength-based way of working, where families invite us to support them on their parenting journey. We ask families to join the Your Family community, rather than register to, and families are choosing to join for a variety of reasons. Some want to find out what is available to them in their local community or receive a monthly newsletter. Some want to be connected with others in their community or signposted to agencies that can support their most pressing need. Some expectant parents are joining to receive a baby bag, co-designed by parents. This is a rucksack given to expectant parents with something for baby, something for parent. This is an opportunity to start connecting with families and enabling families to connect with others. Some families are joining to access an activity defined by the parents or partners, for example, a drop-in coffee morning, and a few families have joined to access home visiting to help them with their parenting challenges. The Your Family team also maintain regular contact, checking in with families to see how they are, and this often leads to further interaction. The team will regularly check in with families asking for help, and for others, the team will check in at various points depending on the age of their child. A family with a new baby may receive a call or an email in between their statutory visits from health visitors. The Your Family programme has provided integrated training to the workforce. The Your Family team, family centre staff, health visiting, family nurse partnership, a Better Start Southend creche team and early help. We are all speaking the same language and all working based on the strengths of the family and have an ambition for co-location. Together, we have a clear understanding of how the wider workforce can work together to meet everyone's main agenda of improving outcomes for children. The training has included the family partnership model and Solihull antenatal and understanding your child's behaviour, all of which are evidence and strengths based. Your family are developing a shared record and case management system where family centres and the Your Family team can read limited records where there are shared families. The next stage of the system will be including all our delivery partners to the system, and we will be able to track all interactions a family makes on their parenting journey. This will provide us with an insight into what families need, and with the inclusion of recording outcomes, it will show the impact of those interactions. Your Family, along with our partners, aim to improve speech, language and communication, social and emotional, and diet and nutrition outcomes. But Your Family is also providing opportunities that will build community resilience, and that will lead to real changes in systems change. I'm now going to hand over to Amanda from Nottingham.
Thank you, Julie. I'm focusing on the third of our golden threads, which is nurture. So nurture is defined as caring for and protecting something whilst they are growing. This is apparent across all 5 of the A Better Start sites, where each site has a strong ethos of nurturing, valuing and supporting the workforce, with an emphasis on growing our own. Across the Better Start, we do this through supporting new and existing workforces, having robust training which is linked across the workforce to enable clear and consistent messaging for families, providing ad hoc training as new evidence presents, offering volunteering pathways, supporting parents to have a voice and become parent champions and board members, as well as focusing on the workforce wellbeing. An example of growing our own workforce is evident in Nottingham, where we have created a brand new workforce of family mentors. The aim of the Family Mentor Service is to reduce inequalities, provide better support and improve outcomes for young children and families across 4 key wards of Nottingham City. With the use of 5 age-related evidence-based handbooks focusing on child development, the Family Mentors deliver the Small Steps at Home programme. This is a home visiting programme which starts at 32 weeks of pregnancy and will continue into the child's 4th birthday. Each visit focuses on a range of topics which are relevant to the child's age and improve outcomes for children in the areas of diet and nutrition, social and emotional, and language and communication skills. So what makes our Family Mentors so special? Well, our Family Mentors are a paid workforce of peer supporters. They are local people who are recruited for their lived experiences and qualities rather than qualifications. The Family Mentors go through a unique recruitment and training process before supporting local families. There are currently around 70 Family Mentors. Some Family Mentors have since had such confidence in delivering their roles that they have been empowered to successfully apply for roles in other workforce areas, such as Women's Aid, the probation service, and even going on to further education to become a social worker. We also have Family Mentors who themselves received Small Steps at Home and were encouraged and supported to become a family mentor themselves. It's a privilege to be able to share with you today one person's journey who did exactly this. I'm going to share with you Christina's story.
The health visitor rang and told me about this new service, and she said if I want to try to see what it's all about. So I was in this country for a couple of months now, but I still wasn't very accustomed to what was happening. I felt a bit isolated, and I had a newborn baby. I became a volunteer parent ambassador because Magda, my family mentor, inspired me with her work. And she helped me so much that I felt the need to give back to the community, to give back the same support I received from her. A couple of months of being a parent ambassador, I became a parent champion as well. Then Magda suggested that I shouldn't be stopping here. I could do another volunteer work for Framework whilst helping out with the community groups. And that helped me a lot, especially with my feeling of isolation, because I've managed to meet other parents, and I've just felt from the start that I belong. I became a family mentor in February 2019 after my second attempt of getting the job. And the minute I found out I was successful, I was so happy because I just felt my dream came through. But being the second attempt, I was encouraged and supported to try again. And I thought to myself, I should persevere. I shouldn't give up, because on my first interview, I was quite stressed. I was quite emotional, and I had to change a couple of things within my behavior. So that second time, I made sure I've given everything I got. In the future, I would like to become a health visitor, and I truly believe that the training, the experience, and the support I got from the team will help me achieve this goal.
So that was Christina's story. Her story is so inspiring and a real example of how the three golden threads and the key messages we have spoken about so far intertwine, as Christina was connected with her community, which provided her the opportunity to access education, and through nurture and care she received from her family mentor, she has grown in confidence and skills to become a family mentor herself. And as she shared in the video, this is not the end of her journey. I'm now going to pass you over to Carrie from Bradford.
Thanks, Amanda. I have the pleasure of tying up all 4 golden threads that we have identified today, as all 5 sites focus their plans to sustain a better start beyond the duration of its funding, and we are all in agreement that the key messages to enable sustainability are a shared vision with the child at the focus that holds prevention at the heart of everything and can readily be articulated at place via a common language and with consistent metrics. A shared vision that values collaborative pathways that are built around need and not where capacity, governance, or where the system allows. A shared vision that rebalances power and creates ownership and clear purpose. Secondly, an integrated workforce that is truly integrated and not to be confused with co-located. An integrated place-based system led by a workforce that is reflective of the community. The voluntary community sector and community itself being equal partners and not just as an added extra. Our Better Start sites have demonstrated that meaningful co-production at every opportunity installs trusted relationships and sustainable outcomes. And finally, investment in relation to capacity that supports the prioritisation of continued professional development opportunities. This includes innovative practice becoming embedded within the workforce and the future workforce, by influencing and shaping local curriculums to ensure prevention and early intervention are embodied, as this creates lasting change and in practice and in the culture of the workforce. This has been made possible by a Better Start, delivering a workforce development plan with shared continued professional development opportunities via a variety of high quality learning and training for all those working with pregnant women and families with children aged 0 to 4 years. A Better Start has given investment that places value, time, trust in the greatest asset, that being the workforce and the community. All 5 sites have excellent examples of how the learning and investment has become embedded within the workforce to improve outcomes for young children and families. But the 2 we are highlighting today are from Bradford and Blackpool. Bradford is committed to building a fairer and brighter future by addressing adverse childhood experiences, also referred to as ACEs. The adversity trauma resilience work in Bradford District has been supported by Better Start Bradford along a journey of development that has led to a substantive joint-funded ACEs lead for the district. This leadership will ensure that ongoing development of the work in Bradford and act as an active participant in the regional adversity, trauma and resilience structures and working groups. Today we hear from Zach to understand more about how Better Start Bradford embedded its learning to create sustainable system change for the workforce.
Hi everyone, I think it's a fair point to say that the conversation around ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, trauma, resilience have been a part of the dialogue and discussion in Better Start Bradford since the very beginning. What we saw in 2018 was real momentum being built around what needs to come next, and that was on the back of the tour of the Resilience film. Following the film, Better Start Bradford coordinated and facilitated a conversation with decision makers and community members around what needed to come next. And what was absolutely clear for us at that point, that whatever came next, it needed to be joint. It needed to have a whole system approach to become both truly trauma informed and trauma responsive. That was the foundation for what came next. And what we saw after that was partners like Public Health Bradford get involved, who took a lead on doing the health need assessment in 2019. Now, this really painted a picture for us as to why is there a need for us to address adverse childhood experiences, why is there a need for us to be trauma informed, and why is there a need for us to take an across the lifespan approach for this. Following all of that work and what came before, we saw the development of a strategy for the whole district. We also saw the creation and a jointly funded role to coordinate this piece of work, which is between Better Start Bradford and Public Health in Bradford. So that was the background of where we've got to, and what came before where we've got to, should I say. So it's really exciting when it comes to the work happening around workforce development and ACEs trauma and resilience. We've seen the creation of some amazing resources in Bradford, like our infographic on what life is like with and without protective factors. We've also got the research poster, which is now an award-winning research poster. It outlines what it is that we're trying to achieve with the ATR programme. So these are all resources that are either mapping out the journey of what we're wanting to do, or it's resource there for people to understand what we're talking about. As well as that, we're really keen to look at learning and training opportunities for our multi-sectoral workforce. And in order to do that well, what we did was a mapping exercise last year that told us that we in Bradford are really fortunate because we've got so many different training opportunities that are either role or sector specific, that talk about ACEs, trauma, resilience, either in their entirety or give it a nod. Where there was a gap, which we're hoping to plug with our upcoming commission, is looking at that multi-sectoral approach, multi-agency approach, that basic level of understanding, so that we've got one shared, coherent understanding of what do we mean when we say adverse childhood experiences, what do we mean when we say we want to become a trauma-informed district. And that is something that we're currently working on. As well as that, Bradford and Better Start Bradford, should I say, have been involved in helping shape what happens on the regional footprint. Now, the regional ATR programme is led by the West Yorkshire Partnership, and it's also funded by the Violence Reduction Unit. And their approach to workforce development is slightly different to us in Bradford, and it's really focused on specific workforces and what their needs are. So what we're doing there is, for one part of it, we're working with the police forces across the region, in particular the first response teams, to make sure that they understand what we mean by ACEs, and they really use that to embed into their practice when they're going out and going into homes. So that's one part. The second part we're looking at is training bespoke and specific for our housing workforce. And the third one, which is currently under development, is for our A&E navigators. It's been a journey for sure. I've been working with Better Start Bradford since the bid stage, and I think seeing the commitment that Better Start Bradford has demonstrated to be to keep workforce at the heart and at the centre of what we're doing, to make sure that we underpin all parts of the programme with an approach to workforce development, and also looking at things like workforce wellbeing, has been truly inspirational. I mean, personally have shifted from Better Start Bradford and moved over to Public Health to work on the ATR programme. It's not something I would have considered 6 years ago, but over the 6 years of being and working at Better Start Bradford, I've really kind of developed a real passion for this area of work. Now, one thing that I'm absolutely keen on is taking that history with me of what came with Better Start Bradford. Then the reason why programmes like ours work is because they're truly relationship based, and that's what the ATR programme is echoing. Now, one of the things that we're absolutely clear on is that the ATR programme and the strategy is across the lifespan. What programmes like Better Start Bradford do is they assure that the voice of the child is threaded in and is at the centre of what we're talking about. So that's true prevention, right?
The second and final example for the sustained thread is from Blackpool, The Blackpool Enhanced Health Visiting Offer has embedded a trauma-informed approach. Skilling up the health visiting workforce has been crucial to support early intervention and reducing inequalities in early childhood, as families in the Blackpool area are some of the most deprived in England. Their needs are high across the 3 Better Start outcomes, which are diet and nutrition, communication and language, and social and emotional development. But having a trusted relationship with a health visitor can be key to supporting positive behaviour change, thereby promoting sustainability. Early in the Blackpool Better Start journey, it was identified that there was a need for much more wider public and professional understanding of the impact of ACEs, early adversity, trauma, and the impact of this, along with investment in the tools and approaches required to mitigate and reduce their negative impact on outcomes for children. Without being able to connect our families that need the most amount of support into these services, the possibilities to enable effective and meaningful change will be reduced. Through our highly active community development work, the first 3 years focused on gaining an understanding of the priorities in relation to early childhood development of the community, and also the stigma and taboo that surrounds early adversity and trauma. In addition, a responsibility to ensure that these very interventions and support services provided to help with multi-level complex problems do not unconsciously create a re-traumatising environment and experience. This would generate additional and greater challenges for our community and our workforce. Further training saw all Blackpool health visitors trained in newborn behavioural observations tools, and a number of the health visitors also being trained in neonatal behavioural assessment scales. Both are important screening tools that should be used by practitioners such as health visitors. We will now conclude all the learning provided through the 4 golden threads when focusing on mobilising the workforce and community by discussing implications for policy and practice. The Best Start for Life report states, a vision that every family will be supported by a range of professionals and volunteers, a workforce that brings skills, knowledge and empathy to interactions with families. That parents and carers should be confident that the people there to help them have the right skills and knowledge, and that whoever they speak to is aware of the full range of support available. To make this possible, the Start for Life workforce, whether public or third sector, recommends up-to-date skills and knowledge for the workforce about their own area, as well as manageable workloads and appropriate supervision. However, professionals and volunteers also need to understand how their service fits into the bigger picture of support for families. A Better Start is a blueprint for fulfilling this vision through the many examples you've heard today, and through the 4 golden threads. We are not just upskilling the workforce and communities, but also providing support and the right infrastructures to enable them to be the best they can be. Evidence-based programmes on their own will not change outcomes for children. We need to maximise the potential of programmes through being delivered by the right people and in the right way. We have seen models of health visiting in Blackpool, and we have emerging evidence from Bradford, who are also testing an enhanced health visiting offer that values an upskilled workforce with appropriate supervision and support. It ensures parents feel seen, heard and cared for, and practitioners have the right skills, knowledge and tools to provide the best support. These evidence-based models are key examples how the Better Start learning can be embedded into business as usual. The Health and Social Care Bill sets out key legislative proposals to reform the delivery and organisation of healthcare services in England, to promote more joined-up services and to ensure more of a focus on improving health rather than simply providing healthcare services. As shown today, the Lambeth Family Partnership model demonstrates the benefits of joined-up working, enabling a shared understanding between families and the workforce, and it has proved to be the vehicle by enabling better decision-making for practitioners through access to wider sets of information. And finally, the levelling up agenda. As we know, levelling up means giving everyone the opportunity to flourish. One of the drivers for disparity depends on the area or location is human capital, meaning the skills, health and experience of the workforce. Through a better start, we have learned from the examples given today that we can offer validated models that support skills reform and investment at a grassroots level. As we look to policy, we must closely hold in mind the learning and evidence base that our 5 Better Start sites have clearly offered around meaningful implementation, embracing and fully utilising all assets and offering real solutions to improve outcomes for children. Thank you to everyone for listening today. And now we look forward to taking your questions in the panel session.
So welcome to the third and final panel session of this morning. I think the others have been absolutely fantastic, some really rich discussion, time to reflect on some of the key themes that have come out of the presentation. So no pressure with this one, guys. So welcome first of all to our panelists, Kerry, David and Melanie, and thank you to all the presenters that we've just seen. We've got about 15 minutes for this session, so I think I'll get straight to it with the first question, which I've taken out of the Q&A box, and there's a couple that were linked actually, so I think I'll start with those. And there was a really great question about the current state of the early years sector, and I think health sector and also kind of social care is kind of applicable across many different sectors. About the amount of professionals that are leaving the workforce currently, and we know that some of that has been exacerbated by COVID, and there's lots of research out there about the impact of the pandemic on professionals. So how do we as a Better Start advocate better for enriching the early years workforce, for better conditions, for better support? So I wonder, Kerry, I'm going to come to you first, whether there are any reflections or thoughts upon that.
Yeah, absolutely, Claire. I think we can totally reflect on that in Bradford, as many of the other sites, or just nationally, you know, in relation to the workforce. Workforces that continue to work under extremely difficult circumstances, and personally and professionally, and challenges of need and increasing caseloads, etc. But I think what we can learn and offer is that sort of strength in numbers, and I think where we can see shared training plans and the offer of investment into quality training opportunities to bring professionals together. I think that, you know, we can't underestimate that, that bringing that sort of collective the collective workforce together to upskill and to demonstrate that value, that what we can offer is key. It really is. And then through our outcomes from Better Start, obviously, to really evidence that investment, why it is valuable, why it is worth investing. That sort of preventonomics, isn't it? To invest in the workforce to gain the outcomes in that quality workforce. Absolutely, it is a challenge everywhere, and we see national shortages of health visitors and midwives, and you know, and it does all impact, doesn't it, on what we're trying to do. But I think somebody said to me the other day about focusing on what's strong, not what's wrong, and trying to, you know, really come together as a collective and strengthen numbers. I think in Bradford we were able to offer a great programme through our Nurturing Knowledge events, which again is an example of how that can be done. So yeah, I think I don't know if any of us want to add anything of what you do locally. I know, Melanie, you do lots in Blackpool too.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. I'll take the baton there. I feel a bit like I'm on University Challenge. But yeah, I was thinking about an example that might be helpful to the people joining today, was the work in Blackpool around investing in the future workforce as well, starting especially in the early years curriculum.
So some of the work we're doing there is some of our trainers are going into the colleges and we're embedded in the curriculum. And again, it touches on an element that we shared in the education golden thread around that shared language and consistency of key messages, which I think that is a strength of A Better Start across the 5 sites. So I think although we won't have all of the answers to that really excellent question, I think some of that is about this the shared advocacy that we're all doing, both locally, regionally and nationally. And we've got an opportunity in the Better Start to do that and to advocate for the shared learning, the investment, because that investment, it really does show value in the workforce. And although we won't solve everything, it will, you know, I know myself, if you have those opportunities and you're supported to access the things you need, and like the evidence-based programs that we have as well, that's an investment, isn't it? For both the practitioners and the families.
Yeah, and I think there's something, isn't there, around the work that you just touched on with the colleges, and I know there'll be lots of work going on across the sites about raising that aspiration to be part of the early years workforce, that actually this is something that we should aspire to and not that people just kind of fall into. So I think that shared language, there is lots of work going on across the sites to really try and build that aspiration. Actually working in the first 1,001 days in that kind of area is an incredible privilege and incredibly important. So there's definitely something around that aspiration setting as well, isn't there? Linked to that question, there was another question that was posed, which was around workforce well-being and how we support workforce well-being, again at a time, I think, you know, due to COVID as well, that things are much more challenging for people. So I wonder, I think Melanie or David, potentially, if there's anything you can share about some of the learning we've got from some of the initiatives that we've put in place that have really promoted well-being in the workforce.
Yeah, I can take that question and then pass on to David. And just to say, when we're thinking about wellbeing, 2 of our colleagues who worked really hard with us to present the presentation today haven't been able to be with us because they're not feeling well. And I think Jeff has just posted about Julie in the chat. And so, yeah, this was very much a collaborative effort. So we'd just like to send our get well wishes to them. But yeah, you were saying about the lost my train of thought there, about the, yeah, can you just remind me? Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well-being.
Yes, that's it. Sorry, I totally lost what I was going to say because there's a couple of things that I wanted to share. So I think in the presentation, Amanda spoke about from Nottingham. She shared the story of Christina, who, and also the Julie shared about there was some wellbeing initiatives around, actually I don't think it was in the presentation, but we talked about it when we were preparing, about the importance of wellbeing and about in Nottingham, the art of being happy, how they'd invested in the workforce around where, particularly during COVID, how they had these virtual sessions to improve and help the workforce, and it was from Dr. Happy. And also here in Blackpool, we've undertaken during COVID, my colleague Vicky led on this, and she spoke in our earlier presentation today about our wellbeing warriors. So we have lots of wellbeing initiatives that we take part in and that we lead on across Blackpool to, particularly in the Better Start team, to build that resilience and come together in times of challenges. We have lots of things like our Steps Challenge, our book club, film club, and things that we come together to really help us to feel better. And we know we're modelling that across the sites and the importance of wellbeing. And also there's that investment, isn't there, in the workforce wellbeing around supervision. So in our health as a team model, we have really invested in supervision of the workforce. And that reflects back to something that was said earlier today about how it's the way A Better Start is consistent and we might do different things and have different evidence-based programs or different initiatives, but the way we do it is consistent, and threaded throughout that is our way of being and our trauma-informed approach, and that really resonates within this when we speak about well-being, doesn't it? I don't know what your thoughts on that are, David.
Well, I suppose it's more about what we kind of did as a result of the pandemic, which kind of threw a curveball through everything. So we as a team, we provided kind of surveys for the team just to get the general feel. We also changed things like our agendas in the service reviews we do every quarter with funders. So COVID's really brought wellbeing much more to the fore, I think, than ever before. So it's always one of the key questions. I think it's there to stay now, which is a really positive thing to come out of it, because it is really important, obviously. So we asked that as part of our service review quarterly process. Also as well, we even did things like offered kind of team therapy for the team during lockdown, because we are identifying people that are suffering through kind of isolation or changing their behaviours, which they wouldn't have wanted to do. So yes, so that's probably some of the areas and also we worked really closely with our providers. And it wasn't just about finding out about families, it was finding out about the workforce too. How were they coping? Some of them were on the front line, they were managing the food hubs locally. How were they surviving? Did any of them get COVID? Obviously, it's an obvious one you're going to ask. So yeah, it was really key for us to understand everybody's kind of mental well-being, I suppose, during that trying time. But I think as a result of that, things are improving, and that's always one of the questions that we're going to ask going forward.
I think we were similar again in Bradford, similar, but I think I just wanted to really tease out there about role modelling, and I think that's what we were able to do, because we sometimes see in services that are extremely stretched and under pressure that goes quite quickly, doesn't it? And the focus is on that delivery rather than well-being, and that is key to delivering really good quality services, having really supported members of staff and the community to be able to do that well. So I think that is something that we've heard, through our discussions in preparation for this, and today throughout all the examples given. It's about better start being able to role model that and to keep it really central to what we're doing and what we're delivering. That's just what I'm echoing what Melanie did.
Absolutely. I think it links to the previous session, doesn't it, around when we talk about evidence and data and being able to provide quality services, and we can only provide quality services if the staff that are delivering them are feeling like they're supported and they've got kind of good emotional well-being themselves as well. So it's all
absolutely, because I think we talk a lot, don't we, about co-production with our community. So it is absolutely, and like we've absolutely heard the importance today, but that co-production with workforce as well, they're having that local intelligence and knowing the communities that we work with, the trusted relationships with our members of the staff and community. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, David, you highlighted that really well there when you said throughout COVID working closely with the providers. That was it's key, and that I think we truly are. I know for me, it's about that relationships, isn't it? But that true connection and collaboration that we do by maintaining our relationships, and that nurture, going back to the golden thread, and that word you brought out there, Kerry, about nurturing our staff.
Okay, so there was another great question in the chat, which was about how we support parents to move in volunteering and then into paid roles as part of the A Better Start workforce. And I imagine that you've all got something to say on this one. David, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I remember in the bid phase where we do lots of consultation with parents, obviously, because it's about co-production. And so many parents wanted to be in work. They wanted to provide for their children, but it wasn't necessarily always the opportunity for them to do what they wanted to do. So the idea was that our Parent Champion service, part of that strand of work there will be around pathways to employment. So we decided to set up something on our website, and it's not just for Parent Champions to access or volunteers. It could be for any parents really, but we saw it that it's something that we could pay back for volunteers and the effort that they were putting into being part of our broader community engagement team and being a source of knowledge for the local community. So very much focused on that, around that. So other volunteers, food ambassadors, for example, so we train them up, so we give them their food hygiene certificate following their kind of accreditation. So from that, we've identified opportunities where they might be able to get paid work as a result through the organisation that provides the training, our Healthy Living platform, that runs our Leap into Healthy Living service. So that we try to provide these opportunities wherever possible to put the skills into practice. And if that can translate into paid time, then that's great. And that gives them the opportunity. And that's just more important about referenceability as well. So providing volunteering opportunities provides reference for some people that might be new arrivals to the country, so might not have that kind of background that other people, it's not a level footing. So you have to provide those opportunities for those people. So that's what we've been doing, I suppose, in Lambeth as a primary, one of our primary strands of volunteering.
Thank you, David. That was great. Anybody else, would you like to add to this? Melanie, Kerry?
Yeah, I think Christina's story was amazing, wasn't it? And so inspirational about, and just really, I thought when I saw this question, I think it came in before that video when I thought that really illustrates amazing how she'd gone from volunteering and being so wanted to give back and build on her skills, that she then moved into a paid role, and how she'd shown resilience as well. But she was supported, wasn't she, to do that? Because she said it was the second time that she was successful in that, but it really shone through and her journey. And I think we've seen that in a number of examples that have been shown today. And like, for example, in Blackpool, I think Julie spoke about our work about the community connectors, and a number of those we've seen them take up, come to our activities and then want to get involved through the volunteering, and then they've grown their skills. We have the volunteering academy here in Blackpool that really helps support our volunteers to then go on to gain paid employment and opportunities, and then people even move on into other roles within the partnership from that. So there's a real trajectory there and a journey of growth, and of which there's nurture, education and support. So again, reflecting back on those and connections on some of the golden threads we've spoken about.
Absolutely. And I think you very just nicely just dovetailed all of that, Melanie, and linked it back to the presentation. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much to the three of you for being such great panelists, and absolute well wishes sent to Amanda and Julie, who have been instrumental in developing the presentation. Unfortunately not able to be here today, but hopefully we've represented some of the work across their sites really well as well. So it gives me now great pleasure to hand over to John Mothersole, who is the England Committee Chair, who will provide some final reflections.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you to all the panelists throughout the day. I've just realised I think my backdrop is back to front, isn't it? If that's the way it's appearing to you, I apologise for that. I've got some history with A Better Start. I was a member of a team from Sheffield that bid to be adopted as an ABS area. Self-evidently, we didn't succeed in that, but I've tracked it ever since, and probably, someone just said it appears back to front to me, but not to you, thank you for that. I was on that team for the same reason that you've been on the teams that you've been on, and it was three things really. It was a chance to make a difference, it was a chance to make a difference in my place, and it was a chance to change the system. I think it's quite interesting over the years how place-based approaches have become much more accepted and expected. But of course, it's the chance to change the system is the big opportunity. That's the true legacy here, because if you change the system, then it keeps going irrespective of whether individual ABS initiatives carry on. And so it was a bit of a moral mission and also a practical mission as well. And today's discussions have drawn out three big issues: empowering communities, changing systems, and mobilizing the workforce and the community. And just looking at the wide range of sign-in organizations amongst the participants today, it's very clear that that mobilisation has spread very far and very wide. And those are the changes that last. And in many respects, what ABS has done, what you have done, is answered the question, which is how do you invest in prevention when all of your resources are tied up in dealing with the symptoms? And in many respects, prevention will make the state affordable to itself. But too often there's an inability or maybe an unwillingness to invest in prevention. Maybe it is the double running of resources. Maybe prevention takes a little too long sometimes when there's a search for quick solutions. And I applaud all of you because you stepped up on that mission to show what can be achieved. And just reflecting on some of the points that have come out today, and I won't reflect on everyone's contributions because that will take too long, but Matthew started off by welcoming much to welcoming government policy. And of course, governments do lots of things. They spend money, and sometimes I personally, I'm always impressed by large amounts of money, but I sometimes get a bit lost in them as well. And I think the most significant thing that's come out of this is that recognition about the first 1,000 days of life. That's the breakthrough. The Best Start for Life document is absolutely where the long-term change will be rooted. There's been much talk about integration. I've worked around the integration agenda for a long time, and I am absolutely convinced that integration really can only take place at the local level. Institutions at head office actually find it hard to integrate with each other despite goodwill, good intent, and actually it's local places with local partners and actually real people who get integration to be done. We've heard about commissioning changes. Now, just a little plea from me, really. Commissioning can still be very focused on inputs. And a plea I would have is let's try and all commission for outcomes here, because that means that we can change how we're doing things if we find on the journey the outcome isn't actually arriving in the way that we wanted or as quickly as we thought. Co-production has been much mentioned. I'd just like to give a shout out for that. Sometimes it gets overlooked. Sometimes it's seen as a little bit too hard. Somebody said, none of this has been cheap, nor has it been easy. And I absolutely recognize that. What I would say is because it hasn't been cheap and easy this time round, it will be cheaper and easier for those that follow in your wake going forward. And that takes me to the point that was made from colleagues in Blackpool, which is basically, I think they said, if it's doable in Blackpool, then it's doable anywhere. And I'm a firm believer in the adaptable, not adoptable approach. Every place is different. So what Blackpool has shown, what Southend has shown, what Lambeth has shown, etc., they are showing what works so others can adapt it to suit their place, but they don't have to start right at the beginning. The colleague from Bradford talked about the little moments that matter. And I think what ABS has managed to do is to amplify those little moments into a movement and to system changes. And one of the later contributions, somebody stated, investment in early years does reduce inequalities. We all knew that. That's why you got involved in this in the first place. The difference is now that we can all stand up and say, we know it does, and we can prove it does. And therefore we can show it's the right way for the public purse, the public pound to be spent, because it does work. We've moved, if you like, from a belief system to a provable system. And that is very, very powerful. The purpose of the strategic programs was to provide stable long-term investment to explore change. I don't know if that's unique, it's certainly rare, and the National Lottery Fund is one of those rare bodies that can provide. And I've often felt that working in partnership, particularly for big institutions, is learning the art of letting go. Being brave enough to allow others to take the lead, to shape, to co-produce. And I think The fund did that, and I think the major institutions in your local places have done that as well. And those institutions, I think, should be applauded for it. I would also say that the return on the investment has been tremendous. I'm not an economist, don't subscribe to the price of everything and the value of nothing, but the return on investment has been absolutely tremendous. And we're already seeing public policy adopting and reflecting some of the approaches that you have brought to the fore, with Andrea Leadsom last week visiting a project in Blackpool. And a conference like this is the basis for learning. I mean, the real gift of ABS is today's conference, the ability to show to anybody who wants to listen that you can prove what works, but also you've proven what doesn't work. So people don't need to waste their time and their resource going down blind alleys. And the National Lottery Community Fund, we don't make policy, we're not allowed to, and we don't really shape policy, but we do inform it. And the information that's come out of this directly from you is already doing that. So reflecting from a fund point of view, would we do the strategics again? Well, I'm not going to answer that, so don't hold your breath, but there's elements that come out already. So much talk today about ICSs, integrated care systems. We are investing National Lottery players' money in ensuring that the VCS sector has a strong voice around the boards of ICSs. We're partnership with the King's Fund around public health and prevention within the role of an ICS, recognising again that if we can get around the big board tables to shape how the money is spent, it's more likely to be spent on issues that really work and really matter locally. But as an England committee, we were reflecting last week about the strategics, and we were wondering out loud what themes would we choose today in 2022, not to do the strategics again, but to be our priorities going forward. And that is work that we're undertaking at the moment. And I'd love to hear from any of you, just through the National Lottery Fund website, what you think the themes ought to be. Not just the big pressures in society, but where you believe the big changes could be made. And just to echo a point that David Knott made at the start, the National Lottery Community Fund UK-wide is starting a process of strategic refresh, which will take place over the next 12 months. So this time next year, we should be signing that off. Again, please engage with that, because it's your chance to use the learning you've gathered through this to shape how we deploy National Lottery players' resources going forward. I'm just going to close by thanking you all, 700 people registered for today's conference, which is a tremendous number of people. But I want to thank you not for today, really, but for the years that have led up to today, because you've been there doing it, showing what can be done. And lastly, bringing it back home, I'd like to thank Thomas McCulloch and the lottery team for their steadfast partnership through all that. I'll sign off with actually what you're showing is that real change happens in real places. Thank you. Back to you, Francis.
Thank you very much for those closing remarks. And I suppose bringing our really eventful morning to a very helpful close. I hope on behalf of NCB and the National Lottery Community Fund and the 5 Better Start teams that you have learned lots about the work that's going on to improve the lives of children and families in your areas, and that you leave here today inspired to continue fighting the good fight for the youngest members of our population, who really are the key to achieving the kind of society that we all want to see growing forward. Special thanks to all the teams across the 5 A Better Start partnerships for their time, their expertise, and their incredible dedication to developing the content for today's event. It's not easy when they all have full-on day jobs to do. Thanks also to the team at the fund, David, Matt, Tom, Jill, John, and Vicky, for their support throughout the year in the build up to this event, and a huge final thank you to the team at NCB, and especially Sarah Creek, who has worked tirelessly in preparing for today's event for several months, coordinating across 6 organisations and dozens of people within each. No mean feat, and her dedication has resulted in the hugely successful event we've attended today. to let you know that next steps will be the publication of a report summarising the content from today's event, and we'll use that opportunity to include links and resources and further information based on the questions and answers that you posed today. That resource plus the link to the video of today's event, which will be on the Fund's website, will go out to all those who registered to attend today's event. So that will be with you soon. What I would like to just close with is by helping us learn, and you'll see that Katie from Beacon House has posted a link to an evaluation form in the chat. We would be really grateful if you would take some time just before you sign off today to give us some feedback on today's event and help us continue to improve what we do at NCB to share the learning from a better start. Thanks very much, folks, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.